Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second part of What If Naruto Has a Soul of a Legendary Dragon. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
As you wish, Kiba, Naruto said after he sighed and his eyes briefly turned a deeper shade of blue. I'll use my next attack to defeat you. I won't date your sister if I don't. Kiba grinned and said, all right, we'll see what you have. Don't worry, said Sum and Hana, who were a little concerned up in the stands because they didn't want Kiba to die for his foolishness. He will not murder him, Sora said, but if he's going to do what I think he is, this will probably hurt. They nodded at him and went back to watching the game. Why do you believe in him? Shoza asked, joining the clan heads. Although he is strong, Sora-san, how can you predict what he will do? Sarutobi didn't tell you. Sora laughed. The hatchling was trained by me. I would join the senseis. For what other reason? Fortunately for me, Kakashi missed a huge opportunity. I just took advantage of it. The clan heads were both surprised and curious about how this man had made Naruto so strong in just 3 months. They probably wouldn't have guessed that a lot of physical training and mass shadow clones had played a role. Well, Kiba, this is it, Naruto said with a smile. I'm sorry, but this will hurt lot. Naruto blurred from view as he charged at Kiba. No one saw the lightning chakra accumulated in his hands. He quickly took Kiba's feet out from under him before he punched him into the air. He appeared in front of Kiba and threw multiple strikes that would have killed him had Naruto not held back. Following this, he twisted in midair, backhanding Kiba into the ground before landing beside him. As he landed, though, he spoke in a calm voice. Ryu Renden, Barrage of the Dragon. Almost unconscious, Kiba coughed. Well, Kiba? I haven't been touched by you during this fight. I just used one move to beat you. Do you still consider me weak or Adobe? With seriousness, Naruto inquired. Why can't I move? Kiba asked, shaking his head. It was easy. I used lightning chakra to charge my hits with the exception of some bruises. You will be okay after your body has had time to eliminate it, which should take around 3 hours. I refrained, Naruto answered. As the medics carried him away, Kiba nodded and passed out. Naruto lightning shinned at Hana and scowled a little. Sorry about hurting him, but he needed to keep out of your business. Hana laughed. Sume sighed and left for the infirmary. Hinata and Kurenai were still glaring daggers at Hana, who had moved to stand next to Naruto's spot earlier. Most people were shocked by his victory, and Sasuke wanted the power he displayed. Kakashi was still a little confused, but he understood Naruto's remark about himself, and he decided to help Sakura during the month-long break, even if she wasn't in the finals. As the screen rolled and everyone turned to watch the next match, Hana grinned and turned to face Naruto, giving him a 10-second tongue war before muttering, enough for now. Observe the battles. I don't want Hinata to catch me. I don't really understand, said Naruto with a frown. Is it true that she likes me but is unable to express it? Had she? She is a shy person, but if she can't lay a claim, then you aren't off limits, Hana said, nodding as they watched Hinata versus Neji. Furthermore, don't even consider it, she said with a fierce smile, because you're mine now. With a laugh, Naruto put his arms around her waist and uttered, never. However, that does not preclude me from becoming her friend, does it? She appears to be in need of one. I don't mind friendship as long as I'm here, Hana said, shaking her head. You'll lose what makes you a man if you try anything else, okay? At the end, she said sweetly. Naruto shook his head. He was furious as he saw Neji use mind tricks to put Hinata down, and as Hiyashi appeared to nod once. How could someone in your own family not believe in you? Hinata. Don't pay attention to that nonsense. Everyone has the strength to fight. All you need to do is believe in yourself, Naruto said. Don't care what people think. With gratitude, Hinata turned on her Byakugan and said, Naruto-kun is right. But you, Neji-ni-san, are the one denying his destiny. Say Habi-heim, he said, recalling that Anko had been friends with Kurenai. Most people gasped that he called her that and didn't die. So why does Hinata have such low self-esteem? Sora frowned as he watched the fight, thinking that no one was naturally that shy and had such low self-esteem. Someone had to work on it. Nai-chan once claimed that her family constantly chastises her because she is too kind for their image. Anko sighed and paused to reflect. She holds back from her father's violent sparring so as not to harm her younger sister. That's what she told me, anyway. She is useless as a clan heir. Hiyashi said she lacks the will to continue as the head of her clan and is far too kind. I know you aren't happy, Sora-san, but it is a clan matter, said Sarutobi as Sora turned and prepared to burn the man to ashes. I can't get involved. As Sora watched Hinata get hit in the heart a second time, he snarled. She had fought much harder than most people expected, and even Hanabi had not fared this well against Neji. She stood up again, and this time, Neji was about to kill her, but the Junin swiftly showed up and stopped him. Special treatment for the main branch. How typical, huh? Neji looked straight ahead and saw a hand covered in lightning chakra, with his pinky and pointer fingers where Neji's pupil should be. Just 3 inches from his face. Take another look. Fate's bitch. Sora said. You were just saved from blindness. Calm down, Naruto, he said firmly. The medics showed up after Hinata coughed up blood, but they were unable to assist her. Sensei? Are you able to take action? Naruto inquired. Sighing, Sora said. Ryu Mashi. Dragon's Mercy. Silver chakra poured into Hinata's wounds and healed them. Sora sat back breathing hard. Damn it, he looked at Hiyashi and Hanabi, who were both staring at Hinata with disgust, and said, Alright worm. You can't do anything but I sure as hell can. This takes about 3 times the normal amount because I'm not a healer, and even then this is the best healing jutsu we have. He was exhausted, but now he was furious. Sora vanished and then resurfaced beside Hinata, accompanied by Hiyashi and Hanabi. What are you doing, in your opinion? Hiyashi inquired icily. Tamashii Tenso. As his chakra engulfed the 3 family members, Sora yelled, Soul transfer. After a minute or so, it subsided, and Hiyashi and Hanabi began to gasp for air, tears streaming down their faces. The next time you beat up your daughter or sister, remember the pain you just felt. Sora left them there and went back to the stands, sitting next to the Hokage seat, saying, because I'm sure you know, she's not weak. The Hyugas were escorted to a private infirmary room. What were you doing? Sarutobi inquired. Something forbidden, but I don't care. Sora sighed. He explained, I made them feel the emotional backlash from them and the pain of every strike they ever gave Hinata. The majority of the clan leaders actually appeared to approve of his punishment. Sarutobi nodded, and they watched the following bout, which pitted Sabaku no Gaara against Rock Lee. As Lee shouted about flames of youth, they both looked up and saw the legendary unbreakable sunset genjutsu. Hana screamed and Naruto sprang into action, realizing why Naruto had reacted so badly and wondering how family members could injure themselves in such a way. Byakurai. 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 After a couple of minutes and much evasion on the part of Lee and Guy, they came to a halt. Never again, do you understand me? Genjutsu? No, shouted Naruto. Youth flames are all right, you understand. Guy, who was behind Sora, and Lee, who was behind Hana, both nodded their heads, the only 2 safe places. With his pipe in his mouth, Sarutobi said, Naruto-kun, please report to my office once these exams are over. Everyone, including the Genin and Junin, assumed he would be fined or something. Congratulations on completing your first S-rank mission. While everyone perspired, Kakashi merely shook Naruto's startled hand. When Lee finally began the match, it appeared that he would not be able to hurt Gaara at all until he removed his weights. That is man. He was fast. Naruto and Sora saw the demonic chakra and bloodlust emanating from Gaara after Lee used his attack, and they weren't going to let him get hurt for something as trivial as a match. Gaara stood down in the arena, feeling both a little irritated and afraid at the same time. This match is over. Control yourself, Gaara. Sora whispered to Lee, I'm sorry I stepped in, but he would have crippled you otherwise. Lee just nodded, aware that he couldn't have escaped, but he vanished as the sand wave was about to grab his arm and leg. After being declared the winner, Gaara questioned, why is your mother afraid of you? He inquired. With a smile, Sora said, dragon's bow to no one hatchling. Gaara appeared content, and the Suna shinobi exhaled a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, despite his motivation, Choji lost the final match after colliding with the wall and losing consciousness. As the final matchups were determined, Sarutobi stood up and gave a long speech about the significance of the exams and how they helped maintain peace while people drew their lots. Neji vs Naruto. Shino vs Gaara. Sasuke vs Kankuro. Temari vs Shikamaru. Victor vs Dosu. We hope to see you all at the Chunin exam finals, so please get ready for next month. Before dismissing them, Sarutobi said, with Sora by your side, Naruto, I know you'll be ready for your father's name. He grinned brightly as he observed Naruto celebrating with his girlfriend, brother, and new sister. Naruto said, what is it? With a nod, I want you to stay with everyone and let no one leave this tower, Sora said, her face growing serious. Many people appeared both shocked and incredulous at the same time. Any attempt, even Shunshin, will result in death. Sora, what's wrong? Said Sarutobi. I'll let Naruto fully explain the reasons. Sora scowled even more and turned to face Naruto. This aura? Keep it in mind, this is the aura of Balor in terms of power. They are surpassed only by pit fiends and Biju. He turned back to the crowd and said, listen up. You could probably take a squad of Hezru right now, but don't push it. I will not protect you if you leave this tower. You are responsible for your own demise. All demons are from Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual version 3.5, which I do not own. Just stay inside and you can leave once the demons outside have vanished. Gaara said, demons do not scare me, as her eyes twitched. Sora gave him a fierce look and said, Ichi, stop talking. He turned to Naruto and said, full power, no limits, anything gets near the tower's entrance. This ain't playtime with the kitty ninjas anymore. Go for it. He glanced at Anko and said in a whisper, you remain here, you will be a great light to them because I haven't yet trained you. What do you mean? Anko asked, looking perplexed. I don't have time for this, he sighed. Look, he said irritably, you turned half dragon when I marked you. The only thing that separates them is that Naruto is capable of self-control. You can't. I'll go into more detail tonight. Okay. Anko nodded, a little annoyed at his attitude, but she could sense his frustration and, perhaps, a hint of fear from the mark. He whispered to her so only she could hear. Since he hadn't experienced the thrill of fighting demons in nearly 3,000 years, Sora turned to face the entrance and grinned as he left, and everyone cheered, come and get it, boys, you'll be eating in hell tonight. Alongside Sora they sent platoon after platoon of Drekts after him, which disappointed him. Did they really think he was that weak? Drekts were the typical foot soldiers, about 10 years tall, with short legs that were slightly behind the body and long arms that ended in wicked poison claws. The stomach and body areas seemed to be one giant bulge from the legs to where the neck should be, which went slightly in before coming out to a hideously marred face. The spine seemed to come over the top and connect to the small bump above its face. They were weak, but in numbers, they could defeat a new dragon. He was Ryujin, the man who decimated armies in the ancient wars, and Sora was furious. Did they really believe he had gotten this bad? Enough. He closed his mouth and looked around the smoking clearing as he roared into the Drekts, spraying silver lightning bolts that jumped from one body to the next. Burning them he felt better, but then he heard a crash in the undergrowth, and he grinned and said, "Welp, looks like the sergeant is coming in to play." The Hezru smashed into the clearing and charged directly at Sora. It was a giant monstrosity, with a rotund face, long rows of teeth, deep-set eyes, and a nose that seemed to be below its shoulder line, much like a Dretch's, but the shoulder line had a row of spikes that would be easy to impale if someone was foolish enough to jump on it. Its arms were only slightly larger, but had a small horn emerging from his right, one at the elbow. As the demon raised its hand to throw all of its charge into a single body-destroying punch, Sora dropped into a stance and brought his right hand up to match the punch to the demon. Sora appeared relaxed, but he actually tensed his muscles and was ready to spring at a moment's notice. The demon's power was demonstrated by the loud explosion of dust and smoke that erupted out of the clearing, leaving only the question, which is stronger? Alongside everyone else, it had been almost 30 minutes and Naruto could still feel the demons moving, so he stood at the entrance and watched the forest. Sighing and turning to face the group behind him that was growing restless, Sarutobi came up to Naruto, and everyone stood waiting. "Would you kindly explain the situation, Naruto?" did he ask. "As you know, dragons are the frontline fighters against demons," Naruto said, nodding while maintaining eye contact with the forest. Demons can occasionally become arrogant and attack lone dragons in the wild. They are pursuing him because Sora is here. That's not totally accurate, but I don't want to reveal everything just yet, Naruto thought. Wait, you said dragon, does that mean he is a? Inuichi said. After giving it some thought, Naruto said, yes and no, he is carrying the contract for summoning the dragon. There was a huge boom in the forest, and everyone's head turned to it. Naruto heard some clicking noises and his eyes widened, saying, "Oh man, please tell me it's not a retriever. I fucking hate those things. The last time I fought one, it turned my leg to stone." Those who knew Sora's true position knew it was a half-truth, but they kept their mouths shut. When a 12-foot spider-like creature emerged from the woods, many people's eyes almost widened, and they all started to perspire when they heard the words, "Kami dammit. You send these things just to get even with me, I promise," Naruto yelled. The retriever looked a little annoyed at that statement. Its 6 legs propelled it forward, while its 2 front legs, that's 8 altogether, prepared to strike at Naruto. A call of Sanzai Karabakashi, Senko, blur from existence, flash, and Naruto was holding a rather plain-looking katana. "Close the doors. Right now," Naruto screamed as he confronted the attacker. Hana saw Naruto just as he blocked to his right before spinning and slicing at the left, knocking away the offending limb. Sarutobi nodded, and the doors began to close. The screen lit up, but there was no sound, and it showed Naruto leaping back from the demon that stared at him for a moment. "SSSSSO, you are the one," Sarutobi said. It said, "The Nexus Dragon Warrior." "Maybe I am, maybe I ain't, why don't you come and find out?" smirked Naruto. He turned, holding his blade down and back with his right hand while facing the demon with his left. "You are too arrogant for your own good, brat." The demon appeared to frown. This dance appeared to go on for a long time, but it was only about 5 minutes. Naruto was unable to generate enough dragon chakra to pierce the retriever's armor, and the demon, unfortunately, knew this and attacked without regard for defense. It charged him, and Naruto ducked under the right claw-like leg that came down. He then swiftly spun and raised his blade to knock away the left. Not enough dragon chakra. Even with it reacting to this demon, I'm lucky he hasn't used his eyes. He seems to be underestimating and playing with me, Naruto thought bitterly as the dance swiftly turned deadly again. Wait a minute. Sora said he developed Byakurai specifically to beat enemies with harder than normal armor. It's a piercing technique that he downgraded to a capture technique. Naruto grinned fiercely as he leapt over the right leg once more and kicked off of the thing's chest. Jutsu no Kage Bunshin. He stabbed his sword into the ground and yelled, "Let's see if you can take this shadow clone technique." 50 Narutos appeared with puffs of smoke. They shouted. Alongside Sora, the great Belnazar had been sent to destroy the young dragon soul, and he was standing 12 feet tall in the tree branches, with 2 long horns sported from the side of its head, a flaming sword in its right hand, and a flaming whip in its left. The Ryujin was fighting his forces, and although the demons had seen this man's power when he fought in the wars, he had lost much of it when all the people of his age had died, so the Balor had no reason to be afraid of Hima. He was nothing more than a washed-up warrior. No human could physically withstand that charge, the Hezru thought as the dust settled. Sora stood beneath the giant fist, his own fist visibly matching it. "Is that the best you got?" This Hezru had been born after the wars and had no idea who this human was. Unfortunately, for him, that is. Man, they must have really let the standards drop if that's what counts as a charge these days, Sora said indifferently. Unfortunately, the Hezru only heard the human say, "Too slow," before his vision turned red and he fell apart into 2 clean-cut pieces. The Hezru was furious that this simple human had spoken down to him, so he quickly increased the pressure on his head before pushing off and turning in place. He should have been able to at least hurt the human, and Belnazar was disappointed that the Hezru had ever come under his control. He pushed that thought from his mind and turned his attention to Sora. As he vanished from view, his eyes widened, and he swiftly spun around to block Sora's double-bladed strike. "Hello there, Balnazar," he said. "I see that you're still hiding and allowing your subordinates to weaken your target." "Ryujin, I thought you had died. After all, you were just human." Balnazar scowled and spat out the word, "Human." "See, that's why you demons always lose," Sora said with a smile. "You always think that people are inherently weaker than demons." Sora just backflipped and almost caught Balnazar under the chin after Balnazar shoved her back. "Humans are inferior. The only thing you are evolved primates." With his knees slightly bent and his entire body screaming power, Sora laughed and positioned himself so that his right blade was held parallel to the ground at his chest and his left was close to his knee. "Let's find out, shall we?" His implication enraged Balnazar, who swung his blade down and cracked his whip out to the side, clashing as lightning and fire danced in the air. Alongside Naruto, the retriever was a little confused by Naruto's strategy, but he forced that thought from his mind and concentrated on the clones, wondering why he was making so many copies when Naruto could not hurt him. If you have played Fire Emblem, Sacred Stones, you know what I'm going to do. I love this attack. By the way, check out this link if you want to see an image. Watch. VWNHZHNJXWO and feature related. Naruto grinned as he set himself into his imperfect technique, which he had been trying to do for the past month. Since he learned about it, he focused on speed, which is the cornerstone of this technique. "I haven't quite mastered this yet, but it'll do for you," Naruto said with a smile to the retriever, who was staring at him in confusion. Senko no Ryu. Dragon's Flash. Naruto whirled around in his spot, keeping his front foot planted, and bent his back and front leg further while crossing his arms and holding his katana at a 30-degree angle in front of him. For a better view, click the link above. He vanished, and 3 semi-transparent visions of him appeared behind him suddenly. 4 of those visions appeared on the retriever in this scene. When he heard 8 cries of "Byakurai," the retriever's smirk turned to shock because he could feel the blade barely scratch his armor. Unfortunately for the demon, those 4 spots happened to be vital organs that were roasted, so it fell over dead as Naruto flipped down from above, breathing heavily. White lightning. 2 shots each struck the scratches, destroying the armor there. As the demon was engulfed by darkness, Naruto remarked, "Damn, pant, that still takes far too much out of me, pant," and proceeded to the tower door, where he was immediately glomped and forced into a brief tongue war by Hana before he withdrew so the others wouldn't see them. Before anyone could respond, they heard a shout of "Saurayuha, Dragon Strike." Alongside Sora, Sora smirked as he flipped up and used his sword as leverage to avoid the whip and block the blade he had been taunting the giant demon, making him more and more irate, and he had forgotten how much fun it was to piss off your enemies. However, he was exhausted and had had enough of playing with his opponent, and he still had to explain to his wife, and he had a feeling that it would not be easy. He leapt back, saying, "All right, I'm finished, Balnazar, this has gone on long enough." "What makes you think you can decide when the fight is over?" Balnazar sneered. "This Bal-chan," he said, narrowing his eyes, "Kaminari no Noru, Ryu. Ride the lightning, dragon." Balnazar's eyes widened as Sora's swords began to glow with his lightning chakra. "This is the end, Balnazar." Sora smirked. He lifted his right sword above his head and said, "Saurayuha. I will not hold back any longer." As he brought his sword down, the chakra roared as it enveloped the now screaming Balor, who exploded, destroying a good portion of the branch they were on. Dragon Strike. A silver dragon of pure chakra formed around Sora. Look at the picture of Sessamaru with his dragon strike. Same thing, except silver. The strike continued, obliterating most of the canopy in a 2-mile stretch beyond the demon. "I hate having to kill a demon like that," Sora sighed. "I would rather battle them directly in any case. I have to return." He swiftly made his way back to the tower. "If he's being trained to use that, we have no way to beat him." Most people laughed nervously as they stared at the chakra-made dragon, and Naruto whistled in appreciation. "Damn, wish I could do that." After about 3 minutes, during which most people chatted, wondering if the fight was over, Sora landed in the clearing in front of the tower. "Crap. Now I'm in the shithouse and we haven't even done it yet," he moaned. Waving at Naruto and his now irate wife, Anko rushed straight up to the tremblingly smiling Sora and struck him on the back of the head, saying, "Baka. Before I go snake on your ass, you had better tell me what's going on." Sora nodded angrily as she began to explain what "going snake" meant. He needed information, so Sarutobi cleared his throat, and Anko turned around, looking a little sheepish. "Is it safe now, Sora?" At the intervention, Sora grinned and said, "Yeah, worm, it's safe." Sarutobi nodded, and everyone began to leap through the trees or shunshin away. "Just stay out of my battle sight, it ain't pretty," and some of the more squeamish genin will probably lose their lunch. Alongside Naruto, Naruto was a little surprised when Hana caught up to him and hurried to his apartment, and he gave her a questioning look until she slammed her lips into his and made out with him on his couch. A few minutes later, the need for air caused them to split apart. "I'm not complaining, but what was that for?" Naruto inquired. "You're leaving for 4 years, but it'll only be a month for me," Hana said with a cute giggle as she felt Shiroi cuddle up against her leg. "I want you to keep me in mind." "You think I could forget about you?" Naruto said, his face lowering slightly with a hint of sadness. He asked. "Not really," Hana said, shaking her head and rocking her hips, giving Naruto a startled expression. "I just want you to remember why you are returning to me," she said, displaying a hint of her feral side. After swallowing, Naruto chose to play a quick game. "And why am I returning to you, Hana-chan?" With a slight smirk, he asked. "Because you owe me a date, Naruto-kun," was her sexy response, and she smirked sexily as she leaned over to his ear and breathed hotly on his neck. Her feral side was genuinely quite happy with the way he was playing with her, aside from the few nights when she dreamed about how he would look when he returned. "Sounds like a perfect reason to come back, Tenshi-chan," Naruto said with a smile and a lick on the side of her neck. She smirked and said, "Good, now come on." After making out with him again after shivering a little at the lick, "Tonight, we're all having dinner at my house. Bring you win or lose," Mom said. Both she and Naruto laughed before she picked up Shiroi, and after Naruto took a quick shower, the two lovers strolled to the Inuzuka compound. "Well, win or domination in your case." With Sora and Anko, it had been a long time since he had actually led dragons into battle, but it appeared that both his brother and wife would soon be taking positions in that army. He knew that Anko would be well suited to leading a small elite force, as she was an expert in interrogation and assassination. However, Naruto would likely be best suited for a strike or recon group, with his high reserves and insane speed working well for the quick strikes and his above-and-boost stealth. From years of pranking, it was almost time for dinner, so Anko to get some dango while Sora showered. Upon entering, Anko put down the dango, promptly served herself 3 of the 50 skewers, leaned back, and then gave Sora a lethal glare. "All right, Ryu-kun, what the fuck is happening? Remember when the Hokage and I told you that I was Ryujin?" Sora asked, merely glancing at her. "I also told you that I am the general of the dragons," she said, nodding. "On the battlefield, they blindly follow my orders, although there is a small hierarchy. All dragons treat one another as family. You are officially the second in command of the dragon armies since you are now my mate." Anko's mouth fell open. I'm what? She nearly spat out her dango as she screamed. You listen to me. Sora sighed right now. Your skills are not appropriate for combat zones. You are an amazing infiltrator. I therefore considered granting you direct control over the Shadow Core. Even though Anko was still in shock, she appeared interested. What is this Shadow Core that you are referring to? As she fell for the ruse, Sora grinned and said, well, they're the dragons. Killers. Demons do not always hide in plain sight. The ones that aren't experts at hiding among people or the underworld. The dragons known as Shadow Core are experts at killing demons without being noticed. They're able to eliminate a demon without harming a person's soul, but the more powerful the demon, the more difficult it is to defeat, he said. With a gleeful glint in her eye, Anko grinned and said, you mean you're going to give me the dragon's assassination and interrogation squad? With hope, she asked. Yes, if that's what you want, Sora said with a nod. Actually, it's bigger than your Anbu, and the majority of those dragons are strange. You'll get along just fine, I'm sure. They were in the bedroom, and Anko was straddling Sora's waist, gently rolling her hips, when she leaned in and nibbled on his ear before whispering, that sounds like a wedding present to me. Sora appeared stunned for a moment before he realized what had happened. It was going to be a long night. Sora grinned and said, I'm sure you'll find a way, hubbyhum. Anko just laughed before starting a tongue war. East Gates at 7 a.m. the following day. As Naruto waited for Sora to arrive, he decided to play along even though he already knew who it was. He knew that Sora would be with Anko, and they had set the East Gates as their departure point. Suddenly, two hands blocked his vision, and a body was pressed against his back. Kind stranger? Your hands are obstructing my vision, he said. A heavenly voice called out, guess who? And he heard laughter. She said in a childish manner. I want to say Hana Inuzuka, but she's supposed to be asleep after that wonderful dinner we all shared last night, he replied. Perhaps she woke up early to see her boyfriend off, Hana said, pressing herself closer. With his hands still covering his eyes, Naruto laughed and said, all right, Inuzuka Hana. He said loudly before proceeding to whisper loud enough for her to hear, please be Hana, please. She laughed, took off her hands, and spun around before him, saying, right, now, what would be a good prize for winning? She asked with a smile. She kept putting her finger to her chin as she pretended to think. Naruto just grinned and exclaimed, this? Before he heard someone clear their throats, he pushed her against the wall next to them and started a heated makeout session. Surprisingly, he turned to see the Sandame, Sume, Sora, Anko, and Kakashi. The Sandame appeared quite amused, blushed, and backed into the street, while Sora, Anko, and Sume were smirking and giving Naruto the thumbs up while giggling perversely. When Sora said, okay, now that you're done sticking your tongue down her throat, Naruto dodged him and Anko struck him in the head. We're going. He said, don't forget to say goodbye, well, because it will be 4 years. They nodded, and he sighed, don't ask, it's complicated. Anko is coming with us because I have to introduce her and eventually get in touch with Manda so she can work with both snakes and dragons. That drew strange looks because only one summoning was possible. Naruto turned to the Sandame, grinned, and gave Hana a chaste kiss before saying, well, Gigi, keep those counselors in line. I'll see you when you take the tests. He turned to Sume and said, making Kiba see, underneath, K Sume-san. Sarutobi just grinned and gave him the money for his 2 side missions during the exams. Just snorting, Sume gave him a hug and said, call me Ka-san, you little hatchling. I'm going to have to set up a nursery because Kami knows how you're going. Naruto promptly turned blood red and Hana screamed out, Mom, again. Kakashi interrupted Naruto as he turned to face him, saying, you were correct, Naruto. I haven't been an especially good or fair sensei. The council put pressure on me, but that isn't an excuse. I've already asked Kurenai for help in getting Sakura trained in Genjutsu. He took out 2 scrolls and said, these are my only original techniques. If that doesn't work, some medic training would probably work out better. I want to give them to you. The Reikiri lets you swing your arm rather than launch a direct attack, whereas the original Chidori is flawed and only attacks in one direction. Why would you give me these? Naruto asked, turning back to Kakashi after examining the scrolls. Naruto, I failed you miserably, said Kakashi, looking slightly hurt. Your lightning techniques were really powerful. You can definitely make the most of these jutsu. Additionally, even though your teacher is far superior to mine, I still wanted to teach you something. With a gentle smile, Naruto accepted the scrolls and said, perhaps I must leave now. Subsequently, Kakashi-san Sora merely observed the interaction and grinned at Kakashi's peace sacrifice. Naruto went to him and Anko, who waved goodbye before vanishing in a silver lightning bolt. Somehow, I have the feeling that Naruto is going to be stronger than me when he returns, Kakashi replied. If Sora is teaching him, Sume laughed. Old worm over there couldn't defeat him, in my opinion. I may be old, but I'll be damned if I let Naruto beat me out yet, scowled Sarutobi with a smile on his face. He said he needed to get back into shape, so he was going to train. 1 week time skip. Dango Bar. Naruto's first year. The girls were having their weekly meeting, with Yugao, Kurenai, Hinata, and Hana. Normally, Hinata wasn't invited, but since Anko was gone, Kurenai had brought her along. Hana knew why, and she was pretty sure she was going to have to either break a girl's heart or fight for her life. She sighed as Kurenai turned the conversation to Hana. So, Hana, how long have you been seeing Naruto? Given that Yugao was to her right and Kurenai was to her left, Hana chose to respond even though she could see Hinata's tense posture. If it's truly that crucial, Hana stated, since the day before the Chunin exams. What made you go after him? Kurenai asked, nodding. Hana frowned. You must inquire. Above all, why are you concerned? You understand why, Kurenai scowled. It's no secret that Hinata harbored feelings for Naruto. So, because a shy little princess who can't even talk to him shows some interest, Hana said, her face going blank. Is he not to be pursued by anyone? I told you she held feelings for him, Kurenai said, frowning. Hana had had enough. I was selected by Naruto. I don't need to tell you who I am. Hinata's shyness or timidity is her problem, not mine. Why? Hinata muttered. Why did he pick me? Hana asked, her eyes sad. Hinata nodded, her eyes glistening with suppressed tears. With a sigh, Hana said, to tell the truth, I don't know. He calls me Tenchi because I openly listen to him despite the council's directives. I just realized that he is too good for me. With somewhat dry eyes, Hinata glared at Hana, asking, do you love him? I definitely like him enough for it to turn into love, Hana glared back, a little taken aback by Hinata's question. However, I want to spend more time with him before making a decision. He never just looks at my body. He always listens to what I have to say. I've never witnessed him glance at another woman. While we're together, he will never forgive his friends because he is devoted to them. I will not give up the chance to be close to him because he is an alpha in every way. Kurenai and Yugao merely observed as the two scowled in an attempt to demonstrate that Naruto had made the right decision for Hana and the wrong one for Hinata. At last, Hinata said, I'll destroy your ovaries if you hurt him. Despite my timidity, I won't be weak for him, she said it with conviction. All right, said Hana, nodding. I would hate to see him suffer because he is the only man who has ever gotten this close to me. Simply put, he is too good for himself. After glaring for a moment, Hinata smiled a little and said, so you're the person he's been going to lunch with every day for the past 2 months? Yes, it was me, said Hana, looking a little taken aback. How did you find out? He always smiled when he went up to the monument and was practically glowing when he came back, Hinata said, breaking into a genuine smile. You don't realize that watching Naruto-kun is my favorite pastime. Just don't go spying on us when he returns. Hana laughed. The other girls were staring at her as if she had grown a second head, and if my mom had anything to say about it, she might lock us in a room until she had grandchildren. What? I'm telling the truth. Before Hana joined them, they just began to laugh. Perhaps they could get along after all. Exam time skip. 2 weeks. Naruto's time skip. 2 years. There was a bright light shining in the center of a huge battlefield, and as 3 figures emerged from the light, the fighting stopped all around. However, 2 people were crying and staring at the scene, and Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze stared as their 15-year-old son emerged and looked around. So this is the great battlefield of heroes? It seems like no one could defeat you, Aniki? Naruto already knows his parents and has their scrolls with Jutsu, Rasengan, and Hiraishin. Sora laughed and pointed to Naruto's parents, saying, maybe not, but I think you have some admirers. Minato moved forward and said, is that Naruto, Ryujin-sama? An angry expression abruptly twisted Naruto's face. You don't even recognize me? Even though it wasn't fatal, Minato found himself on the receiving end of a Ryu Renden, Dragon's Barrage. As he got back up, that was for sealing Kyuubi into me and making my life hell, he said, charging forward at a speed that only the greatest of warriors could match. Decking his father, tears were streaming down Minato's face as Naruto gave him a hug. And this is for caring enough to ask that I be seen as a hero. Minato grinned and gave his son a hug in return. With a bright smile, Anko took hold of Sora's arm and said, when are you going to embrace a child like that? I expect you to do so after this whole mess with Naruto is over. Understood, Anko said. Laughing as Sora began to perspire, Sora nodded wildly, genuinely thrilled at the prospect of starting a family with his now 2-year wife. Naruto turned away from his father and turned to face Kushina, who was crying. Well, Mom, are you going to stand there? Or am I given a hug? Before kissing him on the cheek and giving him a death hug, Kushina hurried him in a red blur. Minato's face dropped as he looked at Naruto abruptly. You're here, but that means you're dead. Oh my own Kami. Don't tell me that you're... He ain't dead, Yondaime, Sora said, giving him a headshake. We don't have time for detailed explanations. Though everyone laughed at him until they noticed the hordes of fighters who appeared ready to tear them to pieces. After all, Minato and Kushina were already feared, so how strong was their son being trained by Ryujin himself? Speaking the katana's release phrase, see previous reference, Naruto pulled away from his mother and said, Mom, Dad, Aniki, Oni-san. How would you respond to a full-on fight? We against them? That's what I call a challenge, Minato said with a hearty laugh. Boy, you certainly inherit my traits. Minato faced to the right, while Sora and Anko positioned themselves behind Naruto. Laughing, Kushina said, hopefully not before he passes away. I want to see some grandchildren. Taking the left side and facing the adversaries, she said. No worries there, Mom, Naruto said with a laugh. When I return, Hana Tenchi will already be waiting for me. Kushina grinned. Minato chuckled once more, saying, all right, little Hana. Those Inuzuka are fierce in bed, Naruto, so be careful. The group moved as one to join the daily battle that covered an entire plain after Kushina slapped them for the remark. Unfortunately for the fighters, they would not lose today. Konoha. Week 3. Naruto's third year. The Sandaime and Jiraiya are seen participating in a poker tournament in the largest casino. The reason for their participation is straightforward. Tsunade Senju was playing and losing badly, and they assured her that they would pay off her debts if she won the next hand. If she lost, however, she would have to remain in Konoha. The King of Hearts, Jack of Spades, Ace of Diamonds, and the Two of Hearts and Spades were all in her terrible hand. Tsunade sighed again and folded, saying, okay, I'll stay, but what do you want? Easy, said Sarutobi, grinning, for you to train some medic nin. I'm altering the academy's current curriculum. In addition, I am finally making this decision without consulting the civilian council. Could you please help me? All right, sensei, grinned Tsunade. However, don't count on me to remain here forever. Sarutobi simply nodded, and they all left. Picking up Shizune and Taunton along the way, they quickly reached the Hokage Tower, and Tsunade glanced at her sensei as they entered the office. She had always wanted to start a medic nin program, and now that she had conquered her hemophobia while still acting as though it bothered her, she could finally do so. What exactly is the issue, sensei? If that was all, you wouldn't have remembered me, Tsunade remarked. I knew you had a plan in place to entice me back just for that. Tsunade, do you still have Naruto Uzumaki alive? Sarutobi asked earnestly. I know she's my godmother, but why did she leave? She had a duty, and Sarutobi had allowed her to neglect it long enough. Tsunade clenched her jaw. Obviously not. Immediately following the Kyuubi attack, one of your fucking Anbu came to inform me that he had died. I left the village because of this. Sensei. You were aware of this? She almost screamed. Naruto is alive and well, Tsunade, said Sarutobi with a frown. Whoever lied to you and sent that Anbu wasn't me. She left her godson in this village. That means he survived the... Tsunade said in shock. Dear God. The Jinchuriki is him. Where is he? She shouted. Then Jiraiya said, slow down, Tsunade. He's all right. He is currently preparing for the tests. Neither Shizune, who was clinging to Taunton for dear life, nor Tsunade appeared pleased. Who lied to me, sensei? Who stole my godson from me? I want to know, she shouted once more. What is spoken does not leave this room, Sarutobi said gravely, staring her in the eye. Shizune and Tsunade nodded. Excellent, then allow me to explain what has transpired since your departure. Time warp. Aburame compound 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks before the exam. She sighed as she was held in a secure room in the Aburame compound, waiting to be interrogated, as she knew she would. Even when she consented to this arrangement, her teammates would have simply raped her and sent her back to Orochimaru with the news of their failure before she was killed for being the messenger. But she jumped at the chance to escape the sadistic snake's clutches. The bugs didn't bother me. In fact, I enjoyed the company. Shino entered the room with his father right behind him. Although they were not skilled in interrogation, they had let Ibiki watch via a covert camera in the room. They would look for the answers because she was their guest, and she would be freed based on them. Do our friends bother you, Kin-san? Said Shino in a voice that was almost monotone. Not at all, Shino-san, said Kin, shaking her head. When the bugs sensed her displeasure, they immediately called some of their more colorful companions and performed a small dance in her room. Shino was somewhat surprised because these partners were difficult to control and did it on their own initiative. This was a very unusual occurrence. They're very polite and love to put on a show when they feel I am down. Tell us about Orochimaru's plans, Shino said again. We'll know if you're lying. He was keeping an eye out for any indications of deception on her body, and he had to admit that it was quite a sight to see the few insects crawling on her arms. Because so few women permit such behavior, he immediately brushed those thoughts from his mind. After frowning at Orochimaru's name, she told them about his plans involving Sasuke and his impending attack. Unfortunately, she was too low on the food chain to find out much more than the time and the fact that Suna was somehow involved. Shino and Shibi observed all of the explanations and information being revealed, and she never once pointed out a lie. Their partners trusted her, so they trusted her. What do I do now? She asked Shino after everything was finished. You are a retainer of the Aburame clan, Shino said. Appearing to smile behind his coat. You can walk around the village without any restrictions. Simply avoid the clan areas and training grounds until you are officially recognized as a Konoha nin. After we have communicated your information, you are welcome to a less secure and more permanent room. When Shibi saw how his son was acting with the young Kunoichi, he grinned and said, much the same way I acted around Satsumi. Perhaps we will be adding to the clan sooner than I thought. Kin thought that perhaps living here wouldn't be so horrible as they left the room. Naruto has 1 week before the Chunin finals. Naruto was having dinner with the warriors in Valhalla when Sora showed up beside him. Naruto, you only have a week left. Your last training is about to begin, Sora said. Are you sure I'm ready, sensei? Naruto asked gravely. He hesitated before answering. Sage training was not at all simple. I assure you, Sora said with a gentle smile. Naruto, you're prepared. You will succeed if you simply have faith in yourself. Naruto nodded, bid farewell to the group of fighters his parents had gathered over the years, and left with Sora, who left Anko to fight valiantly for the next week while they were undergoing this training. As soon as they entered the Dragon Realm, the hatchlings ambushed Naruto, who played with them until Sora pushed them away. Sora grinned at Naruto's somewhat unkempt appearance before he became serious again and said, over the course of the next week, I will teach you how to draw out your dragon half and make it come to life. But once you start, you'll start acting a little more like an animal. Additionally, you must not allow your dragon half to rule you or I will kill you. You get it? Naruto nodded and swallowed. Encampment of Suna. That evening the wilderness heard a wild laugh. Kuku, I'm going to destroy you sensei and your leaf too. Soon, a man shouted. For Konoha, today was a significant day. Their stadium served as the venue for the Chunin exam finals. There were many rumors, but one thing was certain: Gaara and the last Uchiha faced off in the finals, which everyone wanted to see. Some, however, had staked nearly all of their money on a single Naruto. Uzumaki Sume, Shibi, Sarutobi, and Tsunade had all staked sizable sums of money on Naruto winning and receiving a Chunin promotion. Sume, who had overheard the exchange between Shino and Naruto, had told Shibi and Shino everything. The shinobis were nervous despite the excitement of the civilians. Plans for the invasion and village defense had been communicated to all Chunin rank and higher. Shizune and Tsunade would be at the hospital. Jiraiya was supposed to handle the summons that was allegedly attacking the city. Sarutobi would be facing Orochimaru with a platoon of Anbu. Gaara and Naruto's group was the only wild card. They were unable to account for Sora, and Anko had disappeared from the village as promised. Naruto, in fact, this had put Hana in a bit of a funk. Every day, she had delighted in having lunch with Naruto. They were walking toward the arena. The exams were scheduled to begin in about an hour. But something wasn't right in the arena. There were 3 chairs in the Hokage box, even though there should have been just 2. Sarutobi only knew that the daimyos themselves had requested it, but he had no idea why the third had been added. It appears that a significant individual who had the backing of every daimyo was attending today. Additionally, they had installed tiny screens in the stands that showed feeds from the cage box and a feed that went both ways from the box to the seats of the daimyos. In essence, the cages and daimyos can converse with each other, and the stands can hear them conversing. East Gate. 35 minutes later, 3 figures emerged as a bright light appeared. It's nice to be home, exclaimed the person with the golden hair. A slap reverberated across the narrow street, and the silver-haired one responded, Baka. We need to get ready for the exams. I'm sure Orochipido is here too, and we need to kill him for our promise. Jizuniki, I'm ready. Let's just get going already. I wanna see Tenshi-chan, said the golden-haired one with a sheepish smile. Oh really, Gaki? If I didn't know any better, I'd say you wanna pop the question, a purple-haired woman said, rolling her eyes. No idea what you talking about, Oni-chan. Anyways, I'm outta here, bye, exclaimed the gold-haired man, who then vanished in a flash of gold. Quit teasing him and he might actually propose, the man said, drawing the woman closer as 2 chuckles erupted. The man merely shook his head and they both left down the street after the woman smiled and said, he'll do it anyway. You heard his mom. She refused to let him leave until he promised her. Since you were a crucial component of the exams, you couldn't be late. Stadium. 5 minutes before kickoff, nearly everyone had shown up. A man came up the stairs just as the cage had settled into his chair. On the left side of his chest, a breastplate featuring an oriental silver dragon with its jaws coiling around it was worn by him. For some reason, his arms were just open, and his leggings were a kind of chainmail that hung loosely around his lower legs. He wore a decorative helmet and a silver cloak overall. This man appeared prepared for battle. The helmet is merely for display, so just picture something based on a dragon and wear it. The cage squinted, wondering if his plans had been foiled. However, Sarutobi was taken aback by the person donning that outfit. Sora-kun, is that you? Sora just grinned beneath his helmet. He took a talisman with the symbols for lightning, fire, water, wind, and earth out of his armor and said, "Yo worm. Good to see you again." Ah yes, before I forget, that talisman meant that all 5 of the major nations were behind him. In the world's history, fewer than 4 people have acquired the talisman for all the daimyos to support this man. He must be a great politician or warrior. However, only Sarutobi was aware of which one it was. Sarutobi remarked in surprise, "So you are the one they asked for the extra seat for?" "Quite right, I can't wait to see the matches," Sora said with a laugh. "Yes, the Uchiha and Gaara will make for quite the matchup, not to mention I will start my plan during their match." The cage added Kukakukuku. The cage sat on the left, and Sora sat to the right of Sarutobi, shaking his head. "Your son, Gaara, is indeed strong, but why do you focus only on those 2? Behind his kaula, that small piece of cloth over his mouth, the cage appeared to frown. "My son is strong, and the Uchihas have always been powerful with their dojutsu. The other shinobi here are nothing special," he continued. I almost smiled. "Sora, gotcha, you bastard." Gaara has never been referred to as the cage's son. I'm glad I had my informants knock on Suna's door. Tamari seems skilled, as does Shino, and that Naruto kid seems to have progressed quite well recently. Sarutobi was giggling to himself. He had recognized Orochimaru as soon as he entered the box. However, Orochimaru was unable to recognize hidden potential. Instead, he was only interested in those who stood out. "Indeed, I am anxious to see Naruto-kun fight. However, we must get ready. The fights will begin soon." Stands. At the same moment after arriving, Anko began searching for her companions. She noticed that Hana and all of the rookies were seated together with their senseis. Hana looked anxious and depressed, and Anko could tell Naruto hadn't been able to see her yet. "Oh no. All I can do is flaunt my new equipment." She laughed to herself as she thought. "Oi, Nai-chan!" exclaimed Anko, running straight for the group. When the senseis and rookies turned to face Anko, the women's eyes widened in surprise and the men's jaws fell. The trench coat and mesh shirt were gone. The shin guards and miniskirt were gone. Rather, she seemed to be dressed in tight chain armor. Although she had armor covering her entire body, some areas had more than others. It hung there, but a piece reached past her elbows and dropped to a tip. A small chainmail skirt covered her ass and front, and a plaited skirt ran down her thighs from her left and right hips to her mid-calf. Her left hip was strapped with a wakizashi. In addition to looking extremely frightening to anyone who wasn't going to war, she did a pretty good job of pulling off the look. Ultimately, this chainmail shared Sora's dragon motif. However, Kurenai grinned and said, "Ko-chan, how are you? I haven't seen you in a month." Anko just grinned back, saying, "Well, if you must know," as everyone appeared to lean in, "I was with my husband." The fact that she was married appeared to surprise the Junin family. Kurenai was upset that she had not received an invitation to a wedding, but Hana noticed and asked, "So when was the wedding?" They didn't need to be aware that she was married to someone. Anko shook her head and said, "We didn't go through all that. Too much hassle. We love each other and that's enough." Kurenai appeared to light up at that point. "So who's the lucky guy?" The male Junins were wondering how someone could get close enough without being killed by Kurenai or Anko herself, while the genin were by now afraid that anyone could fall in love with this crazy woman. The fact that civilians only referred to her as the snake bitch or whore, because they were unable to get into her pants, was well known. Anko sat down beside Kurenai, giggling, and leaned in to whisper, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "That is a secret." She leaned back and observed the competitors standing in a line, including Sasuke, who had threatened to burn all of Kakashi's Icha if he was late. "Besides, you'll all know soon enough." Looking at Anko, Hana asked, "You wouldn't happen to know where Naruto-kun is, would you?" She was a little afraid that Naruto might no longer like her because of how much he had changed over the past 4 years. Hearing about her partner and comrade made Shiroi's head perk up. Even though Hana had taken care of her, she missed Naruto just as much as Hana had. Hana flushed at that, but was glad he was so committed. "If I know that dope, He'll make some scene to come in and impress you, I swear. He wouldn't shut up about you the whole time. Anko laughed. Hinata appeared a little depressed, but Akamaru's prodding seemed to lift her spirits. She exclaimed, "Look, it's beginning," as clouds began to form in the sky. Cage Box Stadium. Although there had been some cloud cover at the beginning of the day, the clouds appeared to get closer together as the Hokage began his speech. "Today we are here to watch these young shinobi battle for their right to be promoted to the rank of Chunin." He began when the applause stopped. "Now, Chunins are expected to lead their compatriots into battle. They must be strong of both mind and body. I urge all of you to watch and cheer for those who put their all on the line and wish to show you a good match. Now let us begin." Saying an inspiring speech, Worm, however, you know they will not cheer for one. Sarutobi took a seat. That was all Sarutobi could see. The Cage said, "Speaking of one, where is young Uzumaki? Don't tell me he's chickening out." Word of advice, Cage-sama, never count Naruto Uzumaki out. It just might be your downfall. Orochimaru frowned beneath his cowl. "The dead last hurt me." Sora merely grinned and glanced at the clouds. How ridiculous. Ground floor of the stadium. Take a look at this. Dosu has dropped out, so the extra round has been cancelled. The rest of the matches stay the same. Now would Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga please remain here, and the rest of you take your places in the competitors box. Genma instructed the applicants to stand straight and look presentable before he held out a list of the matchups. Everyone complied, and soon only Neji and Genma were standing on the battlefield. Neji said arrogantly, "HMPHIC Uzumaki has decided to accept fate and surrender the match to me." He had no idea how mistaken he was. People heard lightning cracking overhead as the clouds gathered. As they looked up, the stands began to hum with activity. Valhalla. At the same moment, "Oi! Everyone shut your giant pieholes, my son is fighting down there." Kushina screamed. All of a sudden, the hall was silent. You see, Naruto was feared and revered throughout the warrior plane after 2 years of training and combat with the various warriors. Unless otherwise indicated, all gods are female after all. How else can you explain the divine wrath perverts get hit with? The gods themselves had granted them the day off and joined them to witness one of their favorite warriors display his skills. Neji was speaking when he mentioned fate. The god said, "Kami, can't you put some sense into that boy? I swear he's worse than rabid fangirls." Fate simply moaned once more and hoped Naruto could instill some common sense in him. Kami laughed, "You know that's not how it works. Let's see what you can do, boy." Raijin laughed and said, "Fate, hush. Naruto is about to enter the field. You can change Neji's complex later. You had better make the most of my gift," he pondered. The stadium's floor. Oddly, the clouds' lightning ceased to crackle. A lightning bolt suddenly struck the ground. When most people see lightning, they see a bluish white flash. But this bolt of lightning was made of pure gold. A figure emerged as lightning crackled where it hit the ground. His eyes were electric blue, and his hair was golden. His hair was tied in a ponytail at the nape of his neck, and 2 bangs framed his face. He was wearing dark blue armor of the Anbu type, which lacked shoulder guards. Dark blue lightning bolts danced across the bottom of his black Anbu-style pants. His shirt was a simple sleeveless black shirt on his right thigh. He carried a kunai holster. He appeared to be 16 or 17 years old and stood at a height of 5 feet 11 inches. Stan's Hana was happily drooling and daydreaming about the new Naruto when she noticed the looks he was receiving. This prompted the key in the glare she gave almost every woman eyeing her. Naruto one glance at him and half the girls in the stands were drooling, that is, until a blast of ki, rivaling a Sanin, hit them. Anko laughed and said, Now, Hana, for treating your boyfriend like a piece of meat, you can't kill them." With a sneer, Hana began to massage Shiroi, who purred with delight, saying, "Perhaps I can't kill them. I can still frighten them away from my Naruto, though." Hana blushed at the suggestion her feral side gave her. "That's right, he's mine, suckers, and all of you missed out. Now I can't wait to see just how much he has grown lately." By now, Anko was laughing, saying, "Maybe so, but I have a feeling that your mom is gonna be happy when all this is over." A few laughs echoed through the crowd, and Hana's blush appeared to deepen. The cage box. While Sarutobi and Orochimaru appeared somewhat taken aback by the display of power, Sora laughed at his brother's ostentatious entrance. No one had that much control over lightning, unless you were blessed by Raijin. You haven't seen anything yet, my lords and ladies. By the end of this exam, I guarantee Naruto will have earned his spot as a Chunin. Orochimaru continued to appear a little doubtful, saying, "He was the dead last of the academy, in just 7 months, how could he have changed so much?" Sora gave him a look and said, "Kage-sama, watch the fight, I'll respond to you later." The best things in life are worth waiting for, aren't they? Orochimaru swore a little but said nothing and decided to wait for the response. The floor he waved affectionately at the senseis and air-kissed Hana, who smiled broadly in return. Naruto turned to face Neji, who knew all about the branch family and particularly Neji's story with Kumo. He had met Hizashi in Valhalla, one of the best men he had ever had the pleasure of knowing and befriending, and he was glad he had met him too. A lot of shinobi recognized his hairstyle and paled when they realized exactly who he looked like. Neji turned to Naruto and said, "The skills you showed in the exams were impressive, but it is my fate to win this match." As the proctor moved forward to begin the match and Genma silently waited to see what he would do in an attempt to scare Naruto, he used his Byakugan, "Save yourself the agony and forfeit now." Naruto appeared unimpressed. "Neji, do you think that will frighten me? I am not among the fanboys who are constantly pursuing you." Neji appeared utterly furious. "I am a boy." Proctor started the game. First match. Naruto Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga, Genma stated with a nod. Hajime. As a hothead and the last to die, Neji just assumed his gentle fist stance and waved Naruto's side and turned to face the Hyuga section, noticing that most of the main members were sneering. Perhaps I should give them a reason to sneer. After all, they all believe their taijutsu is so ultimate bunch of morons. I'll show them that they need to change, he thought, and proceeded with his plan. "Neji, I hope you won't rely on your soft fist style," Naruto yelled. "That won't work against me," making sure the Hyuga heard. "The gentle fist is the best taijutsu there is," snarled Neji. "I have everything I need." After a full minute, Naruto jumped back barely winded while Neji was actually breathing hard. "In taijutsu, you may be right," Naruto said, dropping into his kitsune stance and staring at him. "In taijutsu, you may be right." Naruto shot forward at Junin level speeds, starting an insanely fast barrage of punches to keep Neji from striking back. And even Neji was taken aback. "However, because of your clan's lack of foresight, your ninjutsu abilities are completely lacking. I have long acknowledged our weakness in using nothing but Juken. After all, I myself was beaten many times by stronger opponents because I used only taijutsu. Perhaps Naruto can bring this to light," said Hiyashi, smirking, while the Hyugas in the stands were furious, with the exception of Hanabi and the majority of the branch family who were never taught the stronger moves of the gentle fist. Naruto went on, despite Neji's scowl. "What happens if you run into someone who can blast you from a distance until your chakra runs out? What if someone succeeds in surpassing the renowned Kaden of whom your family is so proud? Let me show you." After flying through hand seals, Naruto directed the attack with a thrust of his hands forward, saying, "Raikya, lightning ball." He threw a big electric ball at Neji. Many members of the main branch were shocked and incensed when Neji abruptly started to turn, saying, "Kaden, heavenly rotation." Neji halted his spinning as the lightning swiftly dispersed. But many were stunned when Neji stopped, and Naruto appeared behind him, holding a kunai to his throat, saying, "Your Kaden has a serious flaw. Slowing down makes you more open to attacks." This infuriated the Hyugas. How had the boy obtained a description of the Kaden? How could he so perfectly counter it? Neji glared and turned his head slightly, but Naruto jumped back just as the proctor moved forward, trying to juken him in the stomach. "I don't want to fight you, Neji." Naruto sighed. "I want to assist you in getting rid of the seal that is on your forehead." Neji froze for a minute, then grinned and said, "You're in my divinations field." Naruto mentally swore but imitated Neji's stance, shocking the Hyuga once more. "Hake Rokuja. Yan Sha. 8 trigrams. 64 palms." He screamed and rushed to hit Naruto quickly. "Ni Hansuru Tenohira." Naruto shouted, counter to palms, countering each attack with his own attack and adding chakra to overwhelm Neji's. The main branch Hyuga were incensed that the Kaden, which is currently one of the greatest attacks ever created, was blocked by a mere Gennin. This was ridiculous, and the clan elders were already preparing to have Naruto arrested for stealing clan secrets. Many were once again shocked by Naruto when the attacks stopped, as he stood with his palm extended to Neji's pointed fingers, clearly blocking his strikes. "Stands, I may not have been much of a sensei to you, Naruto, but I am proud to see you standing strong. I must remember to thank Sora for training you so well and you for waking me up," Kakashi thought with a smile. Asuma and Kurenai were as impressed as the Genins, particularly Tenten and Lee, and Anko whistled, clearly impressed, not knowing he had developed such a technique. "The youth of Yash Naruto burns brightly, Gai-sensei," Lee uttered. "Indeed, we ought to commend my youthful companion for his youthfulness." They were about to embrace when Naruto gave them a glare, but Gai interrupted them. Conversely, "Hana, go Naruto. Give that Hyuga ass a kick. Show them who's in charge." Shiroi was yipping alongside Hana, supporting her master in her own unique way, and her feral side was reveling in the power he was displaying and had emerged with extreme Naruto withdrawal. The cage box Naruto had just defeated the Kaden and the Hake Rokuja, Yan Sha in a single battle, leaving Orochimaru and Sarutobi in shock. Sarutobi was aware that the Hyugas would be furious, and Orochimaru was furious that he had overlooked such a potent body. Sarutobi asked a beaming Sora, how did he come up with that method? We met some Hyuga when we went out of town, and they offered to teach Naruto how to fight against a Juken user, Sora grinned. In order to combat Neji, he developed the technique. Therefore, we did not steal clan secrets, if that is what the clan wants to complain about. He glared at Sarutobi to make sure he understood, and after receiving a nod, he said, you asked what could change him, Kazekage-sama. In response, I asked, what could you accomplish after 4 years of training under the greatest warriors to have ever set foot on this or any other land? He uttered those words. Naruto was only 13, right? Orochimaru and the majority of the stands wanted to know what that meant. The floor. Neji said, you know nothing of this seal Uzumaki. Insert sob story with Neji's father here, so you see Uzumaki. Naruto stared at Neji as they stood across from each other. It is the dirty little secret of the Hyuga clan and the bane of the branch house. Everything is decided by fate, and fate has decided that I will prevail in this conflict, Neji declared with assurance. That was a difficult story to absorb, and the stadium was silent. Are you done crying and hiding now, Neji? Sarutobi grimaced up in the cage box, knowing that the consequences of this would be difficult, because you are not the only one with a seal placed on him at birth, Naruto said, his eyes cold and heartless. Let me tell you a story. The greatest Hokage to ever reside in Konoha was the Yondaime Hokage. On October 10th, he vanquished Kyuubi, the demon fox, the day of my birth. Everyone knows, sneered Neji. Shut up and let me finish my story, Hyuga. I'm not done yet. I heard you, roared Naruto. Listen to me now. The Kyuubi could not be killed by the Yondaime since it is a high-level demon. It cannot be killed by a mortal. He had to seal it instead. However, a demon's chakra cannot be taken by a human's coils. However, because the chakra coils were still developing, a baby under a day old could consume it. The Yondaime therefore made the decision to seal the beats into a newborn that day. This is typically an S-ranked secret. So you mean to tell me, Neji said, looking a little pale. You're correct. Neji. My name is Jinchuriki. The Yondaime, however, could not ask anyone to use their child inside his own son. He sealed it, son of Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze. My real name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Since the day I was able to walk, I have been subjected to abuse and beatings. My own teachers made an effort to teach me incorrect information. Many people, particularly the council members, were taken aback when Naruto remarked, however, I no longer carry the Kyuubi no Kitsune. I get charged triple price for outdated goods, and that's if I'm allowed in the store. So, where is it? Neji asked, a little scared. Oh, Kyuubi is no longer there, Naruto thought. Long story short, Neji. He can never return to this plane of existence as long as I am here. Not totally true, but it will give me some protection. It's not just you who suffers. Neji frowned. Maybe you're correct, Uzumaki, but I'm still destined to prevail in this battle. Byakugan blazing, he said. Valhalla. At the same moment, the majority of the warriors were depressed about Naruto's passing, but Neji's proclamation put an end to it all. All right, that's it. She lifted her finger and brought it down as fate spoke, and lightning struck to Neji and Naruto's right. The note caused everyone to perspire the arena floor. Before Naruto read the note aloud, the stadium's patrons appeared perplexed. Dear Neji Hyuga, I am Fate. Please know that I don't condone you acting like my bitch. Please get over your awful behavior and move on with your life. Sincerely, Fate. Oh wait, there's more. P.S. Everyone broke out in a sweat. Give him some common sense, Naruto. It would be helpful to him. Please tell me that doesn't mean what I think it means. Naruto was sweating profusely, and oh, Yami and Luck said they wanted payment for their luck, whatever that meant. If it was possible, the sweat drops grew larger. After a moment of surprise, Hana got to her feet and shouted, hell no, first, he's mine. A flash of lightning struck close to her, and she sat down, flushed. The Valhalla. Looking at Yami and Luck, Kushina said, you know what I made him promise? They laughed and nodded. We just wanted to see what Hana would do, said Luck. Yami laughed and said, yeah, he's free game unless she wants to share. Everyone broke out in perspiration. That seems to happen frequently, doesn't it? What? Yami pouted at their faces. I can't resist. I'd get hot from those whiskers. Kami just gave a headshake. The floor. Sorry, Neji, but I'm done with this fight, Naruto said, letting out a sigh and wanting to end this ridiculous altercation. Get ready to lose. Despite being ready, Neji only heard, Fuin level 4 Kai. After Neji vanished from view, Naruto simply knocked him out. He had a resistance seal on him, currently at level 8, which was essentially like walking through water all the time by releasing 4 levels. He had become fast enough to move like Guy when he had the first 2 gates open. Namikaze, Naruto Uzumaki Shouza, Genma uttered those words. After a long period of silence, Kakashi stood up and clapped. Hana would have, but she had already embarrassed herself enough. The applause crescendoed like a wave. Defamatory Naruto waved joyfully and smiled when he saw Hana, and he waved even more joyfully when she blew him a kiss. As Naruto gained popularity, Gaara and Shino were called to the fights, but Shino immediately resigned, saying, "My companions shall not fight him. Therefore I shall not fight him." He might have been awarded a Chunin jacket for this. Sora and Sarutobi were beaming with joy at Naruto's success. When Sasuke and Kankuro were summoned, Kankuro immediately gave up since he didn't want to demonstrate his skills prior to the invasion. The crowd was now unruly. The first fight had been exciting, and these were boring beyond belief when Temari and Shikamaru were called. Shikamaru was about to give up, but Naruto accidentally knocked him over the edge and into the arena. The fight was interesting intellectually, though, and Shikamaru ended up winning because he was unable to hold his jutsu long enough to win. He didn't have the body to be Chunin, but he certainly had the mind to be Chunin. The cage box. The video feeds had been cut to the stands, but the daimyos were still listening, and the council had hurried to the cage box, with the advisors and Danzo standing in front of the cage and the majority of the lower members standing on the stairs. Sarutobi, why didn't you share Namikaze-san's background with us? Homura inquired. You just rambled on about Naruto possessing the Kyuubi. Why don't you brag that he is Minato's son and that he is bringing all of his enemies against us? Coolly, Sarutobi answered. That demon brat cannot possibly be the 4th son. Satsumi Haruno let out a shriek. Worm. Why are the civilians here at all? Sora frowned. It's a shinobi issue. Your village's laws state that they have no say in such matters. The fire daimyo interrupted the video just as Satsumi was about to respond, saying, yes, furthermore, we should be watching 2 aspirant Chunins, so why is the council interfering with us? Put it off until later. What about Sarutobi? Sarutobi nodded as the fire daimyo smirked at the smile on Sora's face. I want a full account before we are in front of the council, along with a meeting with Naruto and any protectors he wishes to bring, the elderly Hokage said, glancing at him. Toshiro, if it is acceptable to you, I would be pleased to go with the hatchling when he attends. Sora uttered those words. Yes, Ryujin, seeing you again will be pleasant. Fire daimyo Toshiro responded. I'm glad you accepted the special seat. Sora nodded and resumed the now completed battle as the council filed out. The floor. Fortunately, the battle between Shikamaru and Temari had taken about 30 minutes, so Naruto was charged and prepared to pursue Gaara. Naruto had watched the battle between Lee and Gaara, had been briefed on all kinds of demons, and was aware of Gaara's armor, so all he needed to do was either scare Shukaku, like Sora, or defeat him by blasting through his sand. Hopefully it wouldn't be too harmful, but he would see what Gaara wanted to do. Your mother says you are strong, Gaara said with a manic smile. You will spill a lot of tasty blood for mother, even though you are not as strong as Big One. With a scowl, tell mother that she knows what's going on here and I doubt she can beat me. With a frown, Gaara answered, we'll see. Namikaze. Genma yelled rapidly. First match in the semi-final. Sabaku no Gaara versus Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Hajime. I apologize for saying Gaara no Suna earlier. Gaara began by chasing Naruto around the arena with waves of sand, but since Naruto had reduced his seal to stage 5, he could easily keep ahead of the sand and outrun Lee at this point, which did not give him time to use any of his techniques. Unfortunately for Gaara, he knew that Naruto could hurt him with that Byakurai technique of his, and he was not going to give Naruto that chance. Jutsu no Kage Bunshin. Do I really need to? Suddenly there were 20 Narutos and they each sped off in a different direction. Only 3 got away, but that was enough. 3 shouts rang throughout the stadium in a triangle formation. Reryuden no Jutsu. The Jinchuriki was struck by 3 lightning dragons, which turned his sand into glass at the last moment. The sand formed a dome to protect Gaara. There was silence for a moment as the jutsu vanished, and then the glass fell and was swiftly crushed back into sand. The real Naruto was once again on the run, and the 2 Kage Bunshins were captured and destroyed. Damn it. He can just break the glass down. Guess I have no choice but to use what Dad taught me, Naruto thought, and now I just gotta find his seal. Jutsu no Kage Bunshin. He made 20 more, but they immediately went through hand signs and shouted, Raikya, lightning ball. The 20 clones swiftly charged forward behind the balls and headed for Gaara. 3 of them reached Gaara, while the others were intercepted. They quickly turned the sand armor she was wearing into glass, but it began to break, and that's when the clones began beating him. The sand quickly came back to life and destroyed 8 clones before the others jumped back, but they had done their job. Smirking, Naruto commanded his clones to move. He held out his hand, and the kanji for the elements appeared in purple flame on his right hand. 10 of his clones blasted out another set of Raikya, lightning ball, towards Gaara and vanished instantly. Their chakra depleted the final 2 clones, however, charged quickly, absorbing the last of the sand as Naruto hurried past and slammed his hand into Gaara's chest, shouting, "Gogyo Fuin." Gaara immediately passed out and the sand ceased to move after saying, "5 elements seal." Genma moved forward to examine Gaara and said, "Shauza, Namikaze, Naruto Uzumaki." I needed him to distract the leaf, Orochimaru thought, but I still have that demon's promise of help in return for fighting the dragon person who is supposedly around here. Maybe it's that new guy. Meh. I don't care as long as I get to kill Sarutobi-sensei. The cheering from the leaf was incredible, but one man was furious. The rookies were taken aback by this turn of events. Defeating Neji was one thing, but defeating this psychopath killer was quite another. Sasuke wanted to show off his skills by fighting Naruto, and Sakura and Ino were happy to support him. Even though they cheered for him during his fights, Lee also wanted to test himself, and Tenten was a little hesitant to do so. Kiba was proud that he had lost to the strongest person here, and Hinata was pleased that her crush was so strong. With the exception of Guy, who was yelling about YOUTHFULLNESS or something like that, the senseis were largely in disbelief. Kurenai and Asuma had always thought Naruto lacked talent, but you know what they say? Assuming makes an ass out of you, and Me. Kakashi was just pleased, albeit a little taken aback by the strength gain, while Anko was grinning as big as Russia. Damn, am I glad Sora told me to bet on the Yondaime's Gaki. I'm making a fortune. Toshiro was grinning similar to Anko up in the daimyo box. The daimyo of Wave, Tsunade, Sarutobi, Kakashi, and everyone else who bet on him were thinking the same thing. After all, why not rake in the dough under a fake name? All it took was a shadow clone and a henge into his sexy form. The next match was called forward, and it was Temari versus Sasuke. At the beginning of the battle, Temari appeared to be winning, but she didn't fully account for Sasuke's fire jutsu. After attempting to approach Temari for almost 10 minutes, Sasuke gave up and fired Great Fireball at her, claiming that he had more reserves because she had been using gusts of chakra-infused wind to keep him away. After a few minutes, she gave up rather than burn to a crisp. Genma took the stage and said, "We'll give everyone a quick 10-minute break so they can get refreshments and use the restroom. This is for both the combatants and the onlookers. Enjoy, please." The cage box with a bow and a flash of silver lightning, Sora said, "If you gentlemen will excuse me, I have some quick business to attend to." Startled, Orochimaru questioned, "Does he do that often?" "All the time," said Sarutobi with a simple laugh. "You become accustomed to it." Stan's Shiroi and finger waved to everyone before they both vanished again, and Anko slipped away as Naruto, with a golden lightning shunshin, appeared beside Hana and grabbed her. The apartment of Naruto. When Hana pushed him against the wall and began to French kiss him. As soon as they arrived at Naruto's apartment, Naruto shook his head and exclaimed, "Wow! For what purpose was that?" Then Hana laughed and said, "That was for coming back and owning all your competition." Naruto laughed and said, I gotta do that more often then." He took a step back, allowing Hana to get a close-up look at him. In summary, he was her age, masculine, a little more feral, and he was hot. Naruto became solemn, saying, "Hana, you are aware of the invasion, correct?" As she patted a scroll and nodded, Hana said, "I've got the boys right here." With a smile on his face, Naruto said, "Good, because I've got a present for them." He took out a scroll and opened what appeared to be larger versions of Shiroi's armor, but with extensions and retractable wings. Like a Christmas tree, Hana's eyes glowed. "Are those?" "These are for them," Naruto said, nodding. "I had them made because I knew you couldn't bear to watch them suffer." She gave him a soft kiss and grinned, saying, "Thank you so much, Naruto. How much that means to me is beyond your comprehension." "This is for you, Tenchi-chan," Naruto said with a bright smile as he produced an Enbu breastplate similar to his own, but with a deep brown hue that matched Hana's eyes. Dragons have blessed it with the ability to tolerate high temperatures and shield you from them. Additionally, it provides you with a small amount of protection from the weather. If you direct your chakra toward it, you'll receive chainmail similar to Oni-chan's, though, but yours will have green leaves embroidered on it, and it will be the same color as the armor. A direct hit won't be stopped, but anything that looks at it will bounce off it easily. "Nah, Naruto. That's incredible, but are you certain you can give it to me?" Hana inquired. "Yes, Tenchi-chan," Naruto sighed. "This was made by a special friend of my dad, and the dragons wanted me to give it to you," Naruto thought. "In addition, The armor has the Hiraishin seal, which allows me to teleport to you instantly in the event that something of retriever status or higher appears. With a soft smile, Hana removed her Chunin vest, revealing a simple dark green shirt underneath. She put on the armor and was taken aback by how light and flexible it appeared. "Thank you again, Naruto," Hana grinned. "It's not a problem," Naruto said, shaking his head. "I have a fight to get to, so let's go back now." Hana laughed at her boyfriend, who appeared to light up when the prospect of a fight came up. "All right." In Anko's apartment with Sora, when Anko arrived, he turned to face Sora and asked, "Is he here?" "You want him, hun?" Sora nodded, letting out a sigh. "I assumed you didn't want me to fight him?" inquired Anko, looking a little taken aback. "I don't, but you are strong enough to take him," Sora said, shaking his head. "Please don't be arrogant and allow me to assist you at the end." He spoke more softly. Then, with a quick smile, Anko put her arms around her husband and said, "All right, Ryu-kun. You know those two are probably making out right now, huh?" Sora said with a smile and a kiss. "Hell yeah, they are," laughed Anko. Down the street, one could hear the couple laughing. Stadium. Last round, Sora had taken his place at the Sandame's side, but Anko had joined him. Naruto had promised Hana that he would fight alongside her in the invasion. The Anbu and Junin were all tense, waiting for the signal to begin. The spectators and special guests had gone back to their seats, and the last Uchiha and the recently proclaimed Namikaze were facing off down in the arena. Genma entered the field and turned to face his opponents. Final match: Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and Sasuke Uchiha Hajime. Naruto dropped into his own stance and grinned at Sasuke as he slid into his interceptor stance and used his Sharingan. "You want to start this, or should I?" "I don't need the advantage to fight you," smirked Sasuke. "In return, bring it." He is not arrogant. Kakashi has humiliated him during the training period, but he still has problems that will be worked out. With a laugh, Naruto said, "All right, you asked for it." The invasion of sand and sound had arrived in Konoha. He charged forward, and the two settled into a deadly taijutsu dance. After 5 minutes, feathers began to fall and the people started to feel drowsy, but an explosion in the cage box roused the majority of them. There was a brief period of silence in the arena before the cage box exploded. 4 figures jumped from the smoke onto a nearby rooftop, and they were covered in a purple barrier. The Otto and Sand Shinobi who were supposed to be in the crowd rose in smoke, indicating that Sora had decided to remove the Otto Shinobi from the stands while spreading the word that the Kazekage was actually an imposter rather than the Kazekage. Unfortunately, Naruto, Sasuke, and Genma were facing 10 Otto Shinobi on the floor, and the Shinobi in the crowd were prepared to join the battle when Naruto grinned. "Sasuke Uchiha, join us. Orochimaru-sama gives you power," the group's Junin said. Naruto raised his katana to bear and held it directly in front of Sasuke, who merely snarled and braced himself for an attack. "Bankai!" he yelled. Think how Ichigo says it in Bleach. His chakra swirled around him and entered the sword before it glowed and changed. Now he held a golden shamshir with a blue lightning bolt arcing from the tip to the handle, which had a dark blue tsuba and golden wrappings around the hilt. He simply disappeared and then reappeared in front of the Junin, who was too shocked at his speed to move, and decapitated him. He backflipped and dropped into his swordmaster stance. Check chapter 8 for stance. This will be his default stance. And disappeared. 7 Otto Shinobi died due to various lethal cuts, while the last 2 were taken out by Genma and Sasuke. Genjutsu Karakiru. Ryu Senko. Vanish from reality. Dragon Flash, Naruto said calmly. Whistling, Sasuke said, "Nice blade. How about I get one like that?" Angrily, he said. "We need to regroup," Naruto said. "Not now, Sasuke. I also want to find out how Oji-san is doing." "Agreed," said Kakashi, the senior member of the forces. As all of the spectators had gathered on the floor by that point, it would make an excellent staging area. "We must obtain a map of the village. Everyone should hurry to the barrier." The different ninjas nodded before vanishing and then reappearing at their destination. Time-based barrier. Sora and Anko landed next to Orochimaru, who had just shown himself to his sensei. "Sora, I'm happy you're here," Sarutobi remarked. "I could use some help," before scowling and saying, "Anko, this is dangerous." "You're not." "She'll be fine, worm," Sora interrupted, maintaining eye contact with Orochimaru the entire time. "Do you recall that she trained with us for years? In addition, my wife is not going to be easily defeated." "Ya Oji-san, worry about yourself," said Anko with a sly smile. "I'll be alright. I was able to train with some of the top dragons in the area thanks to Ryu-kun. I won't be given another opportunity like this." "No matter what I say, it won't change you," so sighed Sarutobi, calling forth Enma, who instantly changed into his staff form. "Let's take him down," he said. "I'm glad to see you so passionate, Worm," Sora grinned. "I'd say, good to see you again, but I'm sure you don't know who I am," he said, turning his full attention to Orochimaru, who was watching with amusement. The three other people in the barrier, as well as the people outside, looked surprised when Sora said, "In any case, thank you. If you hadn't given hubby Heim here her hickey, I wouldn't have this amazing partner. Thus, thank you." Orochimaru appeared completely perplexed, while Anko was grinning widely and Sarutobi was grinning kindly. Withering glares from the Leaf Shinobi, Orochimaru said, "I'm surprised that anyone would claim that failure as a mate, but I'll be happy to see you two together hell in hell." As he began going through hand seals, he exclaimed, "Kuchios, Edo Tensai." 3 coffins with kanji that went from Shotani to Yan on them rose, making Sarutobi pale, summoning Impure World Resurrection. Sora appeared glum, and Anko scowled at her former sensei. Beyond the barrier, everyone, including the genin, had arrived by this point. Naruto appeared furious at what Orochimaru was doing, so Hana questioned him, "Naruto-kun, what's the matter?" "He's calling in the show, Ni, and Yondaime Hokages to fight the Sandaime," said Naruto, clenching his teeth in rage. He uttered those words. The assembled ninjas were furious, saying, "This traitor's summoning of the ancient Hokages and his disturbing of their sleep is unacceptable. They will not fight for him," a Chunin shouted at random. "They won't have an option," Naruto said, shaking his head. If he hadn't been watching Sora, Kakashi would have been asked how he knew this information. "He will control them." Orochimaru began talking, and everyone could hear him. Many people did not like the direction of the conversation. Sora snarled as Orochimaru laughed. "You said I didn't know you? You're so mistaken. Maybe Ryujin or Sora Ryu. I even have a plan for you," he said. "I'm happy I accepted his offer," Orochimaru remarked solemnly. "Who in hell made you an offer?" A little irritated by this grass snake, Sora inquired. A dark laugh filled the air, and many of the ninja began to feel a deep primordial fear. Why did Ryujin? It's not every day I get the chance to become a legend and kill a student of the fabled Dragon General. A dark portal hovered over the barrier, and from it stepped a creature of freakish nightmares with a canine-like face, a long snout full of sharp teeth, 2 glowing red eyes, and horns that curved slightly inward at the top of its head. "Who are you?" Sora asked, her eyes narrowing. "I wouldn't give a damn normally, but you've caught my attention." With wild laughter, the Glabrezu said, "My name? Retsun. You were unable to get past that obstacle, and I will handle your student directly." "Is this guy deluded or what?" Sora and Anko exchanged a look, but Sora chose to play the game, saying, "Really? And how would you convince yourself to stop him?" "Nothing." Retsun grinned. "I'm going to murder him. He's only been trained by you for 4 months. He isn't strong enough to beat my battalion and me." Outside the barrier, the ninja were shifting uneasily, as if the attack had been forgotten for the moment. Naruto stood beside Hana, staring directly at the demon that threatened him. Hana was apprehensive and unsure of what to believe until Naruto put a hand on her shoulder and grinned, and she returned the smile by taking his hand. Despite being pleased that Orochimaru was delaying his attack, Sora grimaced a little, clearly amused by the scene. "Surely, there must be something?" "Well, I heard that your student has a potential mate," Retsun said with a sly smile. "Perhaps I could be persuaded to spare him if he offered her to me to play with." After a moment of inaction, Sora and Anko both thought, he did not just say that. Unfortunately for the demon, he was completely mistaken about Naruto's abilities. Ryu Senin Hijutsu, Ryu no Tamashi Kai, was the last thing he heard before his vision was destroyed. Dragon Sage Secret Technique, Dragon Soul Release. While the demon wasn't paying attention, Naruto's chakra had skyrocketed. His golden chakra enveloped him as he said those words, and his body changed. His legs below the knee changed to scaled and a 5-clawed foot. Below the elbow, the same happened, although the hands remained 5-finger. The claws were retractable here. His shirt disappeared, although his cargo pants remained, and a reptilian tail sprouted from his tailbone. Scales went up his spine to connect the tail to 2 powerful-looking wings. Every last one of his scales were a brilliant gold color. His eyes shone with a fierce power, and fury lightning arced around his being. Freely manipulated, he disappeared only to create over 100 after images around the Retsun. As Naruto landed, he calmly said, "Ryujin no Senko. Flash of the Dragon God." The demon promptly turned into a cloud of red mist. Only the more experienced members of Kenjutsu knew just how difficult it would be to hit someone that many times. As Sora laughed, she said, "He really shouldn't have said that." With a loud laugh, Anko exclaimed, "No shit. I also believe that you were protective. for heaven's sake, he turned the guy into mist. Unexpectedly, Naruto's new form had sparked a very feral desire, and that display of strength practically demanded that she acknowledge him. She knew she needed something to quell her feral nature soon or she might very well jump him. Hana was a little stunned, as she hadn't even had time to respond before Naruto introduced the demon to oblivion. She looked to her right, where he stood, his back to the Leaf Ninja, not realizing that he was staring at the demons gathered behind the shinobi attacking the front gates. Within the barrier, people began to perspire a little as the coffin lids fell open, revealing the ancient Hokages once more, with Minato looking sorrowfully at Sora and the show and Naidame joking with Sarutobi. "So I must battle you, don't I? It won't be simple," Minato remarked. He was the only one who could match the Yondaime inside the barrier, so Sora just nodded and sighed before preparing to fight himself, even though he didn't want to. When Orochimaru had had enough, he used the tags to stab the three individuals in order to get their compliance. "You take the Naidame and show Sarutobi, I'll divert the Yondaime's attention. Take your ex-sensei, Anko," Sora said, and the other two nodded before approaching. Beyond the barrier, Kakashi made the decision to begin yelling commands. "All right, demons will be our first priority because they exist. Every genin is expected to report to the caves and assist in protecting and guiding the civilians. Report to the designated defensive zones. Chunin help with the frontline defense, Junin, and I'll be in charge of a dedicated team to battle the demons." "How can we win?" A Chunin who was chosen at random said. "Both nations and demons are attacking us." Before anyone else could respond, Naruto said, "Will you die and leave your village? Isn't this where you live?" Naruto looked over his right shoulder, his wing held down so they could all see his eye. "This is my home. Regardless of what or who attacks it, I'm not going to let it fall. Are you going to?" Kakashi was smiling, as was the majority of his friends. Hana was beaming with pride and the rest of the shinobi agreed with his words. "Kakashi-sensei, I'll take the demons with Hana. Let us handle them." Hana and Kakashi both appeared somewhat taken aback by this. "Naruto, are you certain?" Hana looked at him curiously but remained silent when he asked. In response, Naruto said, "Yes, sensei." "Why do you want me to accompany you, Naruto?" Hana inquired. Naruto grinned and said, "Hana, you must learn how to deal with demons if you want to be near me. In addition, do I really need an excuse to go tearing through adversaries while accompanied by a stunning woman?" he inquired. "No," Hana smiled. "However, you do require a stunning woman to prevent you from becoming overly involved." Before she leapt off, she exclaimed, "Race ya there, slowpoke." "Not Hiraishin, he's just that fast." Kakashi stared in awe for a moment before shaking his head and saying, "New orders for Junin." Naruto's smirk turned into a million-watt grin before he vanished in a yellow flash. "Go to the front. You understand that nobody enters the city?" After a chorus of highs and a blurring of ninjas, Kakashi grinned and then avoided the front lines. With Naruto and Hana close to the Konoha wall, however, the Sandaime had planned to trick Orochimaru into claiming Gaara as his son, and every Suna shinobi knew that the Kazekage would never do such a thing. After all, Gaara was just a weapon. This, along with the defeat of the Ichibi container, had prompted a retreat order from the Suna higher-ups. Hana had pulled ahead and summoned her companions in their armor, smirking as she blew through a few weak auto Chunin. However, Suna appeared to have abandoned auto. The Haimaru triplets snarled at the gathered demons, but they seemed to laugh it off when one of the Hezris called out, "Well, it seems our commander has seen fit to send us a treat, boys." Hana blasted through a few weak auto shinobi before encountering the battalion of Drescht and Bobao and 5 commanding Hezris. She landed and visibly gulped. From the trees to her left, Hana heard a voice she recognized growling, "Demon, I would appreciate it if you would stop staring at my girl. That won't save you, though," Naruto said coolly before he and Shiroi, wearing her armor, touched down next to Hana. "What took you so long?" Hana grinned. She remarked, "I nearly had to take these guys alone. Well, a black cat crossed my path, so I," shrugged Naruto. "Don't start taking after Kakashi," Hana moaned. She remarked in jest. The demons, however, were not amused. One of the Bobos threw a fireball at the ninja group and their friends, and Naruto just grinned before Shiroi leapt and flipped, slamming the fireball with her tail, and making it burn the very demon from which it originated. "Now that wasn't very nice." Naruto turned to Hana and bowed mockingly. "Would you like to start this, milady?" Her eyes brightened and she said, "Uh-huh, uh-huh." Hana laughed sweetly and mock-cutied, "It'd be your honor." Naruto laughed back and hurriedly whispered in her ear. She laughed again and nodded once before Naruto moved a little behind her. She hurried the staggered demonic lines and screamed, "Ryu Daitsuga!" The 205 demons were suddenly on the receiving end of a very strong attack, With 6 whirlwinds of destruction tearing through their ranks. 4 of them used fire to bolster their attacks, while the other 2 used wind and lightning, respectively. Dragon's Great Piercing Fang. Even the basic foot soldiers have naturally tough skins and resistances, so normally a human cannot damage a demon higher than the basic foot soldiers. However, with the dragon's blessing, the non-dragon fighters' armors and, later, their claws, allowed them to fight at full damage, and it goes without saying that they were quite effective. Shiroi and Haimaru, the most versatile of the triplets, quickly paired up and began blazing through the enemies to their master's right, while Kajimaru and Mokumaru followed suit and flanked their master on the left. Naruto and Hana swiftly bulldozed their way to the center of the demons and began tearing through the smaller ones like toilet paper. Within the barrier, concurrently Sora was struggling to subdue his friend. Ever since Sora had brought Naruto to Valhalla, Minato had steadfastly maintained a friendship with the man who tried to help his son. Minato was undoubtedly faster than Sora, but Sora was a millennium old, and his reflexes and battle instincts far outweighed the difference. After Minato healed the second strike, Sora became irritated, and when he healed the 7th strike of decapitation, he was furious. He detested the fact that his friend was being used in this way, and even more so, he didn't know how to kill him. Sarutobi was hard-pressed to fight both his old senseis at once. However, his training the past month had paid off immensely. He was able to get most of his skills back on par with his original skill level. Sadly, his stamina had taken a major hit with age, as had his strength and speed. While it wasn't enough to get him killed, against 2 cage-level shinobi it meant bad things. He could barely fend off their attacks long enough to get away, let alone get in an attack of his own. He knew how to destroy them because of the jutsu being his sensei's creation, but that didn't mean jack shit if he couldn't damage them. Suffice it to say, his battle was far too difficult to win alone. The fact that Anko was fighting with a righteous rage was evident. Every attack she used, from her notorious Senejashu, Hidden Shadow Snake Hands, to her recently acquired Ryu Denka, Dragon Charge, which enabled her to surround herself in her Dragon Chakra and charge through an attack while poisoning any nearby animals, was accurate and extremely powerful, making Orochimaru reconsider throwing her away. Sora chose to assist the elderly worm after noticing that Minato would return in roughly 20 seconds. Kachiyose. Ryu Matsuda no Jutsu. Summoning. Dragon Master Technique. 2 puffs of smoke later, a man with dark black hair and deep red eyes stood before Sora. He was muscular, about the same height and width as Sora, and he was wearing full-plate battle armor, which was clearly old but had many markings and ancient defenses built into it. A beautiful woman with long pearly white hair stood next to him. She wore an elegant white kimono with sakura petals falling on it. Her eyes were a brilliant shade of onyx black, and she exuded a deep wisdom. "Oi, Sora. Why are you bringing us here?" said the man. "Sorry, Ryukan-sama, Ryukazi-sama," Sora said, bowing to them. "Please lend a hand to the elderly worm over there. I don't have time to explain why he is confronting 2 of his former senseis." Ryukazi, the woman, nodded and turned to face her husband. "Dear," she said, as an Oni mask materialized behind her and lightning cracked. "Do as he says." Sweating profusely, Ryukan nodded and answered, Whatever you say, dear." In a hurry, he ran off to block and attack Sarutobi. Sora laughed and gave Ryukazi a quick hug before saying, "Thank you. You have taken your duties seriously," she said, laughing and looking him square in the eyes. "Don't fall again, please. The dragons probably couldn't handle it." "Thanks, Kaze," Sora said with a gentle smile. "Do not be concerned, I will not allow that to occur again," he said, pumping his arm in the air in the manner of a certain shinobi with blonde hair. Before hurrying off to join her husband, she chuckled and gave a small curtsy. Sora immediately turned back to face the changed Minato, saying, "Now to deal with you." With the Junin and Kakashi. After Kakashi and the other Junin had swiftly eliminated the Oto shinobi inside the walls, Jiraiya had summoned his own toads to counter and swiftly destroy the 2 snake summons that had penetrated the west wall, which caused the fighting to be particularly heavy. He took a short break as the Konoha ninja pushed the Oto troops back, then focused on the main gate where Naruto and Hana were engaged in combat, seemingly nearly through. Asuma whistled. "Wow, those demons were easily vanquished." Kurenai was astounded that they had vanquished nearly 200 demons in less than 30 minutes, he said. Guy yelled, "Yosh!" While grinning and striking the nice guy pose even against such unworthy opponents, their youthful flames blazed brightly. Guy is hilarious, and I love writing about him." Kakashi said with a simple smile. "Huh? Guy, do you say something?" "Curse you and your hip attitude, Kakashi." Guy frowned. "I agree, Asuma," Kakashi said with a laugh. "Somehow, Naruto's dragon techniques must be involved. They are also using Byakurai and Gatsuga extensively. This should be an interesting fight, Ibiki said, joining them and watching as Naruto and Hana destroyed the remaining peons. We can leave the Auto Shinobi to the others since they are fully retreating. Shall we assist them? No, said Kakashi, shaking his head. We would only obstruct him. Surely he must be getting tired by now? Asuma asked, glancing at Kakashi. In addition, based on my observations, those are demons of the upper class. The Sandame told me about Naruto's training, sighed Kakashi. Fighting demons of all kinds is one aspect of that training. Furthermore, human chakra is only half as effective against demons as it is against them based on their apparent posture and physique. Those specific individuals could likely destroy a house with a single blow. The most experienced of them is Naruto, who has clearly received combat training. Let him handle this. After giving Kakashi a quick glance, Ibiki nodded and said, I agree. Anko told me that she would be specializing in demon fighting and that she was leaving with him. Ibiki gestured to a concealed Anbu and muttered something into his ear before the Anbu fled. If anyone can beat them, it's that Gaki there. With Hana and Naruto, the last of the Bobos and Drescht were obliterated, as Kakashi had noted, and although Hana was a little exhausted, Naruto was barely breathing hard. They had been able to rely on each other and rest for very short periods of time so as not to push themselves over their limits, but the constant use of techniques had left them nearly depleted of chakra. Fortunately, every ninja has a fallback, which is taijutsu. Hana and Naruto stood side by side, Hana in her beast stance, and Naruto in his swordmaster. The Hezris were a little hesitant to deal with the now obvious Ryu Sennin because they knew what that form meant and how powerful it could be. But these humans had destroyed their troops, and that was unforgivable and demanded death of either side. The lead Hezru-eyed Naruto Shiroi and the Haimaru triplets had landed and were flanking their masters on either side. Same pairings as above. Then he let out a battle cry, and the 5 sergeants in the demon world charged at their enemies with full force. The Ninken scattered to the sides as Naruto charged, and Hana quickly followed his lead. Although most people would consider it suicide to stand in a Hezru's charge, Naruto was not most people. In fact, he wasn't even most dragons. The first Hezru followed his actions and attempted to stop, but he quickly realized his error when he felt a burning pain that tore through his left arm, rendering it useless. Hana had taken advantage of his distraction and struck the Hezru's left arm. To deal with the paired Ninken, one Hezru had broken off. Each Shiroi and Haimaru were having the most success. With Shiroi's speed, which was uncannily similar to Naruto's, she was able to lure the Hezru in and dodge with ease, even avoiding and running up the beast's arm to quickly destroy one of its eyes. Haimaru was the team's powerhouse. He could easily attack the demon's legs and slow down the already large demon. They finished this demon in less than a minute. However, Mokumaru and Kajimaru did not have as much luck. Although Mokumaru was faster than his siblings, he was not quite quick enough to avoid the aftershocks of the Hezru's attacks, and his dragon armor saved his life on multiple occasions, though it did little to ease the pain. Kajimaru flew into a blood rage after witnessing his brother being knocked around for so long, and he immediately tore the demon to shreds with a well-placed Suga. He whimpered later at the effect it had on his body, and he promptly joined his brother in waiting on the sidelines and for medical assistance from their master. The remaining 2 Hezru were now very wary of their opponents. It was clear that they were blessed by the dragons and could easily ignore the demon's strengths. Naruto glanced at Hana out of the corner of his eye. Knowing that she wasn't used to this and that she was probably dead tired, Naruto decided to opt for a defensive counter this time and held his ground while Hana stood to his left at the last second. The wounded Hezru brought his left arm to bear and smacked Hana into a nearby tree with enough force to dent it. When he was in Valhalla, few things could enrage Naruto more than insulting his parents or family and calling him weak. One man had made a remark about Hana, and he woke up at the end of the day only to be destroyed for the next 20 days. The second he stepped on the field, Naruto took his swordmaster stance and vanished once more. His body already pushed its limits, but he didn't care at the moment. He reappeared with his sword dispersing into a swarm of golden light, and he didn't even turn around when the 2 demons died from severe amounts of deadly sword strikes. He slid to a halt beside Hana's body and gave her a gentle shake. Hana-chan? Tenshi-chan? He shook her and said, "Wake up." Naruto had not had time to learn how to heal dragons yet, so he had to rely on his limited medical experience. He felt for her pulse and found it to be strong, albeit a little erratic. He was about to pick her up when he was stopped by a hand on his shoulder. When Naruto looked up, he saw a woman with 2 blonde pigtails and a large breast. "If I have to explain, Tsunade, I'm going to kill someone. Calm down. Gaki from here. I'll handle it." She pointed to a woman with black hair wearing a kimono and said, "Go get yourself checked out with Shizune over there." A few veterinarians were checking over the Ninken, and one was doing some advanced work on Mokumaru. Naruto nodded hesitantly, then spared a glance at the injured Hana. Shizune hurried over to him and performed a diagnostic justu, and to her surprise, she found only minor bruising and some overuse of muscles aside from slight chakra exhaustion. As Tsunade promptly mended the few bruised bones she had, Naruto turned to see Hana grinning broadly at him. "Damn, you're lucky girl. Naruto said you would be dead now if you hadn't had that armor." Tsunade, who had come with the Anbu, was impressed by the armor's protective capabilities. She was fortunate to only have some bruised ribs after witnessing Hana being flung as though struck by Tsunade's own renowned super strength. Hana merely flashed a bright smile and gestured to Naruto, who hurried over to her side. "Thanks again, Taiyo-kun." "Son." Naruto stared for a moment before a smile that quickly transformed into a megawatt grin appeared on his lips, kissed her, and she joyfully engaged in a tongue war, causing the Sannin to laugh. "Well, you're both healthy enough to avoid going to the hospital," Tsunade said. Shaking her head, the Konoha forces cheered, believing that the invasion was over, and everyone turned to face the purple barrier that had just fallen. "Take the next day or so to recover, however," they said, nodding. Just 20 minutes ago, inside the barrier, even with Ryuken's assistance, Tobirama and Hashirama's teamwork remained flawless, as every combination that Sarutobi and Ryuken could think of was swiftly defeated and thrown back in their faces. Sarutobi thanked Ryuken for his assistance and smiled. The two then faced off against Sarutobi's former senseis. Just as Ryukaze entered the fray, Sarutobi ducked another water bullet, nodded to her, and shouted to his two teammates. They have tags in the back of their heads. Ryuken, the master of black flames, and Ryukaze, the mistress of the southern winds, were renowned for their combination attacks. Only Pit Fiends and Ryujin himself had survived their combinations. The two dragons in human form nodded quickly and got to work, indicating to Sarutobi to aim for the tags and initiating one of their most powerful combinations. Enden no Jutsu, Kurai Karyu. Ryuken sounded the Dark Fire Dragon technique, and Ryukaze declared, Manamikaze Burasutaringu no Jutsu. Blistering Southern Wind technique. They combined to form a pure black dragon twice the size of a regular jutsu with white flames randomly offshooting from the technique. The cage's eyes widened. Hashirama quickly formed a double-layered Mokuton shield and Tobirama yelled out, Daisunjinheki no Jutsu. The powerful fire technique was barely slowed by a powerful wall of water before it crashed into the Mokuton walls, Great Water Wall technique. They had won, and the two dragons nodded to each other before taking off to tell Sora of their victory. Sarutobi had swiftly moved to the side of his old teachers and watched as the technique worked. These dragons were clearly as strong as a cage in their own right, so he saw his opportunity to destroy the previous cages and seized it, launching his own Karyu Enden against them and immediately burning their bodies. Tags included. He sighed and relaxed against one of the many trees that now graced the rooftop. Alongside Sora, Sora was furious. He just stopped playing around and crossed his blade in front of himself, saying calmly, Bankai, Sora o Shihai Suru, Ryujin. Final release, Rule the Skies Above. Dragon God. His silver chakra flowed down his arms and into his blades, which transformed slightly into two magnificent Eastern-style scimitars, which shone with silver but had golden lightning bolts arcing across the blades themselves. The hilt was wrapped in a golden wrapping, and the dragon heads appeared to flow into the blade. Minato was hard-pressed against the 8 Soras, and unfortunately, he was able to destroy half of them before Ryuken and Ryukaze appeared behind the original. He swiftly made some Cage Bunshin, who nodded and launched the attack. The jutsu will stop if you destroy the tag in his head. Ryukaze remarked, we assisted the elderly worm in eliminating his adversaries. That's okay, Sora said, nodding. You're fired. Thank you for your assistance. They nodded before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Sora quickly sent a mental command to his clones. 3 continued to attack while 1 started to run around the battlefield, seemingly at random. 1 more close was dispersed before Sora looked sadly at his friend. The 2 left fighting him quickly grabbed him and held him in place. Sorry Minato, the end is here. Soryuha Suin. Sora swiftly brought down his right sword and sent the second stream of concentrated dragon chakra at Minato, who was shocked to discover a clone at the end of his jutsu, Twin Dragon Strike. He brought his left sword down from its raised position to destroy Minato. Minato stopped struggling and quickly Hiri shined away. As he looked up, Sora was not pleased with who was present, but he was relieved that he had that clone collect all of Minato's kunais. With Orochimaru and Anko as they had been throughout this battle, Orochimaru and Anko were evenly matched, and she swiftly and effectively countered every ability that Orochimaru sent at her with a snake or dragon attack. Anko had trained extensively with the Shadow Core, and although she was not as strong as her mate, she compensated for it by being sly and somewhat unpredictable. However, unlike Sora and Naruto, she lacked a weapon because she was a dragon by mating and lacked the soul strength to conjure one. She swiftly transformed her initial charge into a taijutsu battle with a few auxiliary ninjutsus. She soon realized that Orochimaru, although he was no slouch in taijutsu, was the only reason he was unable to deliver a decisive blow to Anko. Orochimaru was in a similar situation. He was irritated with Sarutobi and that Ryujin because, first, he could not harm his former apprentice, and he had a sneaking suspicion that Ryujin was involved. Second, he was unable to harm his former apprentice, and he had a suspicion that Ryujin was involved. Third, he summoned two humans who then overpowered the first two cages, allowing Sarutobi to destroy them. Finally, he executed a Kakamemi attack that completely destroyed the Yondaime. What the fuck? Orochimaru was about to flee as Sora and Sarutobi hurried to Anko's aid when a chilly voice called out from the rooftop, "Who the hell dares to take what I have claimed?" Orochimaru, Anko, and Sarutobi all went pale as the voice said. A horned human, beast thing with a tanto in its mouth appeared behind the now visible soul of the Yondaime Hokage. The Anbu and the Sound Four were sweating in fear at this being. This being was the Shinigami, the god of death. Orochimaru did Shini-chan. Sora sighed. He summoned all three of the old Hokages using the prohibited summoning of the second Hokage. Would you like the honors? I had intended to give you his soul, Sora inquired. Yes, this is one of the souls required for your deal, Sora, the Shinigami said with a gleeful smile after narrowing her eyes at her. Aside from that, I'll love escorting him to his proper location. Orochimaru was getting even paler. Is that even possible? But Anko was not pleased. Hold on a second. His hide belongs to me, regardless of who you are, she said angrily. The Shinigami looked at her, then back at Sora, then back at her and proceeded to laugh loudly. Anko's anger seemed to return tenfold. Oi, I wasn't kidding. The Shinigami wiped a fictitious tear from her eye and became a little more composed. Sora, you picked a lively one. I have witnessed his acts against you, Anko Mitrashi, as well as the reasons behind them. His hide belongs to you. I agree. I suggest you keep him around for 3 months. He will be invulnerable, unable to use the cursed seals surrounding him, and without access to chakra he can still sustain damage, but he will not be able to perish as agreed upon. I will pick him up after that time. Are you comfortable with this? With a devilish smile, she asked. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Shini-chan. Anko simply grinned back, giving whoever figured out where I got this 10 cyber cookies. Definitely his mate, the Shinigami roared with laughter. The proposal was approved. Ko-chan, he's all yours. What, you didn't think the Shinigami would let Orochimaru summon the dead freely, huh? She smirked and waved goodbye to the humans present before fading from existence with Minato. At the end, she laughed and reached out her hand and pulled something that appeared to be a purplish orb from Orochimaru. Orochimaru began going through hand seals, but nothing came of it. He tried again, but the same thing happened. He began to perspire when he noticed Anko coming toward him. Oro-sensei, I'm going to enjoy carving my abuse out of your hide, she said in a sing-songy voice. At the end, she became ferocious and lunged at him. With a sigh, Sora took hold of her and said, Honey? How about bringing him to your forest? Anko kissed him quickly and grabbed Orochimaru, who was screaming in terror because the Shinigami had apparently paralyzed his body, leaving him only able to scream, shit, and urinate. She quickly shut him away, and silence fell. Sora turned to the 4 people surrounding them and said, If you drop the barrier and promise not to fight us. All of them stared at this man until they saw him turn to face Sarutobi, who merely nodded in agreement. At the same time, they dropped the barrier and were taken into custody by the Anbu, marking the end of the invasion of Sand and Sound. I promise we will let you leave unharmed, or, should you wish it, join Konoha. Looking out over Konoha, Sarutobi and Sora grinned as they saw Naruto and Hana receiving treatment amid the demons. They make a good couple, Sarutobi added. I'm happy that she protects him. Me too, Sora laughed. Worm. But I feel like they might be more than just a boyfriend and girlfriend in the near future, he said with a smile. Sarutobi gave Sora a startled look and said, They've only been dating for about a month. That seems a bit quick, doesn't it? Dragons bond with their mates at their first meeting, Worm, Sora said, shaking his head. They have known one another for years. Aside from that, your council was the only reason they weren't together earlier, he said. As long as they're safe, sighed Sarutobi. Great-grandchildren with Naruto's endurance are definitely not what I need, he admitted to being a little scared. Then you'd better start threatening Sume, Sora said with a laugh. I wouldn't rule out her forcing them into Hana's room and keeping them there for a few days because she wants grandpups soon. I'll be in the office, said Sarutobi, who had gone pale. The two stared at each other until they both started laughing. In any case, I want you and Naruto in the office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, the speaker said. I have to pass a new law prohibiting Naruto from having sexual relations. It has to do with Naruto's parents and heritage. Sora nodded, and the two vanished into their separate workplaces. With Hana and Naruto following their dismissal from Tsunade, the two lovers made the decision to head to the Inuzuka compound. Arriving just as most of the clan had returned, everyone filed inside and went to their respective homes in silence, and after an hour of remembrance for the deceased, the Nikan and Inuzukas began to congregate in the yard, with each family contributing bits of meat or food to the family-wide barbecue. Astonished to see Shiroi brush her tail over Akamaru's nose and head off to a quieter corner of the celebration and lay down with both of them curled next to one another, Sora arrived and grinned at Hana clinging to Naruto's arm while Naruto was merrily discussing some of his abilities with a few of the other ninjas. Aniki. Naruto waved with his free hand as he looked up to see Sora. Over here. I see you have an ornament there, Naruto. Sora teased his tuto as she laughed and sat down beside him. Both Hana and Naruto blushed a little, but Hana was the first to say, "He's my plushie. When he stops breathing, I'll let go," she joked. Naruto simply grinned and said, "It's okay with me, and I also enjoy having Tenchi-chan on my arm. It's simple to do this." There were catcalls, whistling, and even a, "Take it to Hana's room and don't come out," before he swiftly seized her and twirled her onto his lap before making out with her. From Sume, Hana promptly pulled back and blushed crimson before screeching, "Mom!" The family apparently had accepted Naruto. If they weren't kind to him, they were at least unconcerned. They just laughed and resumed their meal. "Worm wants us in the office tomorrow morning at 9, Sora said with a laugh as she turned to Naruto. "Something involving your parents is at issue." Looking at Hana, Naruto nodded and said, "Tenchi-chan, would you like to join us?" "You want me to be there, Taiyo-kun?" Hana asked, a little taken aback. Naruto angrily nodded. "Obviously, in any case, you'll find out you are more than welcome to attend if you so choose." "Sure, I'll be there," Hana said with a smile and a kiss. However, she whispered into his ear, "I'm staying at your house tonight," as she straddled him with her legs. After nodding and blushing scarlet, Naruto waved to the Inuzukas and said, "Sorry, have to say goodbye." The couple promptly disappeared in a shunshin. The Inuzukas roared with laughter and Sume said, "That's my girl?" Since she didn't want to bother Naruto and Hana anyhow, Sora laughed and went to Anko's house. The home of Naruto, Namikaze Estates. Hana took in the view when they re-emerged in front of the estates. It was not a big house, but rather a large one, with a large living room, kitchen, and private onsen on the ground floor, 4 rooms and the master bedroom on the second floor, a large dojo with seals to strengthen the walls against attacks, and a basement that housed the Namikaze Jutsu vault and library. She was not going to jump him tonight, but she also had no intention of waiting much longer, so she was happy to see Naruto standing in the doorway and patted a scroll she had brought with her. Naruto smiled at her and gestured for her to enter, saying, "Listen, why don't we soak in the onsen before hitting the sack?" "You must be exhausted already," Naruto remarked. "I didn't know you were so eager to get me naked, Taiyo-kun," Hana grinned, revealing that Naruto was unaware that she had brought a bathing suit since you left. "Are you certain you haven't turned into a pervert?" In a playful tone, she said. "I meant nothing of the sort," scowled Naruto as she burst out laughing as he caught her teasing and said, "You're mean." "Yes," she said with a laugh, "that's okay, Naruto-kun-kei. I'll be with you in a moment." Hana smirked and crept into Naruto's room. Noticing the dresser he had taken and the free one on the other wall, she quickly unsealed and hung up many of her more comfortable sets of clothes, put on her bikini, and went downstairs after Naruto nodded and went to the master bedroom, emerging a minute later in his own swim trunks. Hearing the door open, Naruto turned and said, "Hana, why did it take you so long?" His voice trailed off as he saw Hana wearing only her bikini, her breasts, which appeared to have grown slightly since 4 months ago, straining the slightly old bikini top, and her hair flowing around her face. Framing it perfectly, she put her hand up to cover her smirk before laughing into it, which made Naruto think, "So cute." Hana grinned, seeing that his gaze never left her upper body. "Taiyo, see something you liked?" she asked in a lighthearted manner. Despite blushing when he was discovered, Naruto said, "Only if I'm allowed to look Tenchi." "Of course," Hana replied, grinning that at least he had asked for permission. "I wouldn't have walked in here if you couldn't," she said, slipping into the hot springs and relaxing thoroughly under the hot water. Naruto smiled but was still blushing slightly as he got out of the water. She eyed him for a minute before he sat down behind her and started to massage her shoulders and neck. She moaned slightly and Naruto attacked the kinks in her neck. She relaxed and said, "You're pretty good at this. Have you had any prior experience?" "No," Naruto said, shaking his head until the muscles relax. "I simply keep kneading them gently." My mother appeared to enjoy it. With a smile, Hana gestured for the soap, cleaned herself quickly, and allowed Naruto to wash her back. They left the onsen and entered the master bedroom, where Naruto got some clothes and went to the bathroom. Hana took out a silky black lace two-piece lingerie from her drawer, quickly dried off, put it on, and lay on the bed, propped up on her side, and crossed her legs so he would barely be able to see her nether regions, but he would get a good look at her legs. Not expecting to find a gorgeous Hana Inuzuka in his bed, Naruto froze and his gaze began at her feet. Although she had a few scars on her body, they didn't detract from her beauty. His gaze moved up her slim, toned legs to the dark spot where they joined, then up her slender stomach to her impressive bust, and finally onto her gorgeous face, which was smirking. Hana snapped Naruto out of his stare and said, "Although I love seeing you appreciate what I've got, I'm a little tired and I want my plushie." She said something a little childish, then put a finger to her mouth. Naruto turned red, nodded stupidly, and then joined her, quickly lying down and turning so his back was against her body while she put her arm around his neck and waist. "Night, Taio-kun," Hana said, kissing him on the cheek before cuddling up to him under the blankets. When Naruto replied quietly, "Night, Tenchi-chan," his smile was on the verge of breaking before he curled up and went to sleep. We are in Training Ground 44, the deepest section of the Forest of Death. The area is filled with incoherent squells of torture and shrieks of pure pain. The animals have long since escaped the insane laughter of the person causing this suffering. We arrive upon a rather gory and inexplicable scene. Along with several other organs, the man's intestines are spread out on the ground in front of him. His ribs are all cracked and broken beyond repair, as are the bones that follow. His face is gaunt with pain and agony, and his eyes are dry and bloodshot. His neck is angled abnormally, and his vocal cords are visible. The man's shriveled, object on the floor is the last thing you see. Nobody should have to go through this torture because it is beyond anything anyone could possibly go through. Who are we to doubt that he deserves it? Don't you know that this man is Orochimaru? It is also arguably the strongest of the Densetsu no Sanin, but following the events of the previous day, he was turned into Ryujin's mate, Anko Midarashi's personal torture toy. At the moment, Anko was observing Orochimaru's gradual recovery. Orochimaru was apparently left with a seal by the Shinigami that would completely heal him whenever chakra was placed inside of it. It was a lot of fun for Anko to destroy his organs and then heal him. She would leave him pinned to the tree to gradually heal while she went and congratulated her husband on having such a positive rapport with the Shinigami because she had had enough of his suffering before giving the soul to the Shinigami. Sora had visited and explained that he had discussed this arrangement with Shinigami. That was a huge plus in the eyes of both girls. Shinigami is a woman, yes. Before sunshining to the Hokage's office, Anko sighed and clearly examined the ninja wire and kunai that were wrapped around Orochimaru. They had a meeting to attend. After all, after that, they could enjoy themselves. 6:30 a.m. at Namikaze Estates. When Naruto and Hana woke up, they were happily entangled. Hana had been the one to remind Naruto of his meeting today. After they had been cuddling for 30 minutes with a sigh, Naruto got out of bed and quickly changed into his typical clothes. When he turned around, Hana was looking through the drawers on the other dresser. Naruto saw Hana smirk and said, Hana-chan, I'm not sure anything in there will fit you actually. How are there clothes in there? I didn't." His voice trailed off. Before her face twisted into a frown, she said, "I hope you don't mind, Naruto-kun, but I claim the dresser is mine. That is, unless you don't want me to have some drawers in here?" No, I'd be happy to let you use those drawers. They're all yours, Tenchi-chan." Naruto shook his head rapidly. "I hope this means what I think it means," he thought. Hana grinned and said, "Excellent, step 1 finished. The second step is to undress and ride him until you're exhausted. Slow down," her smile said. "Great, thanks, Taio-kun." Naruto felt a little anxious. He didn't want Hana to move just yet. Even though he enjoyed having her in his bed before he asked her for that, he needed to make one more change. "Naruto, hey Hana-chan?" Hana had just finished putting on her clothes when she turned. She said, "Yes, Naruto-kun." "You didn't put all your clothes in here yet, huh?" he inquired. Though a little nervous, Hana shook her head and said, "No, why do you ask?" Naruto laughed. "Well, when we go on that date later this week, I want to be able to surprise you, and I won't be able to do that if you're here now, can I?" he replied. "Well, how about Friday? That's at the end of the week, and I'm sure most places will be back up because only 5 buildings were damaged in the attack, thanks to Jiraiya-sama and you, of course." Hana laughed and brushed off her nervousness. "I know it's a little unrealistic, but I made sure that all threats were promptly disposed of before they reached deep into the city." "Friday it is, Tenchi-chan. Now we have a meeting to attend." Naruto nodded, and Hana followed suit. Taking her boyfriend's arm, there was a flash of golden lightning and they were both gone. Office of the Hokage. 7 a.m. Tsunade, Shizune, Jiraiya, and Sarutobi were all anticipating Naruto and his companion's arrival. Jiraiya was certain that the child would comprehend his logic. Shizune was stealing looks at her sensei and wishing her luck, and Tsunade was terribly afraid that Naruto wouldn't forgive her. The child did, after all, adore Konoha. Anko and Sora both avoided the room, one in a purplish gas and the other in a silver lightning bolt. They didn't even say hi. As they surveyed the space, they understood the purpose of this. A golden flash flashed in the room, died away, and revealed Naruto and Hana just before Jiraiya opened his mouth. "Yo Gigi!" Naruto exclaimed with a bright voice. The sight of the man with Hana did not surprise Tsunade or Shizune. After all, on the battlefield, he was quite protective of her. In contrast, Jiraiya, I can't speak to what was going through his head because he's a super pervert. When Sora, Anko, and Sarutobi saw the two lovers together, they merely grinned. Sarutobi said, "Good morning Naruto, how are you?" "Never better Oji-san. So what was so important I had to get up and come to the office this early?" Naruto inquired. Then Sarutobi said, "Straight to the point then, huh?" Sarutobi gestured for Naruto to sit down, while Naruto merely nodded. Hana took the chair beside Naruto. As he sat down, Naruto was mentally scowling at the direction of this meeting. After swiftly observing the people around the office, both Sora and Naruto nodded, and Sarutobi went on. "These two people are Tsunade Senju and Jiraiya of the Sannin. Naruto, I would like you to listen fully to these people here. I assume Sora gave you your parents' scrolls, correct?" Tsunade moved forward with only a little hesitation. Naruto looked her in the eyes and remained silent, his eyes practically pleading for an answer. "Naruto, we are your godparents. Before you go hating us, please listen to what we have to say. I don't know about the pervert over here, but I am sorry I wasn't here for you. After the Kyuubi's attack, I was crying over Kushina's body and had just proclaimed her dead. I don't remember how long it was before a group of Anbu with the Nei symbol on their heads appeared in front of me and told me her son had died from the influx of Kyuubi's chakra. I was grief-stricken. First, my brother and lover died defending Konoha, then Minato and Kushina, and now, a child not even a day old. I couldn't bear it. I didn't even wait to get a full story, and it has cost me dearly. I quickly told Shizune to pack everything and we left before dawn the next day. It wasn't until Sarutobi-sensei set up a poker tournament that I came back to Konoha, and when he beat me, did I find out the true story." She broke down in tears. She did not look at him, hopeful that Naruto would pardon her sensei and give her another chance. Shizune watched. Hana watched Naruto in silence. She could see that the information caused him to feel both hurt and relieved. She prayed in private that he felt more relief than pain. An exchange of glances between Sora and Anko conveyed their intense desire to murder Danzo right now. Jiraiya was kind of hoping Naruto wouldn't have to talk, while Sarutobi was silently staring at him and attempting to understand him, much like Hana. "It's your turn," Naruto said simply, turning to face Jiraiya. Tsunade nearly recoiled, but she looked down and began to leave the office. She was stopped when Naruto's hand reached out and grabbed her arm. He gave her a quick glance before turning back to Jiraiya. Naruto was keeping quiet because he didn't trust his voice at the moment. Everyone turned to Jiraiya as Tsunade retreated to her location close to Shizune. Jiraiya murmured, "I knew you were alive, kid. I had hoped that the people would respect Minato's wishes, but, apparently, that wasn't the case. I couldn't stay in the village because I had to maintain my spy network, which is crucial to Konoha's survival. I couldn't very well take a baby along for those types of missions, and most of them wouldn't have allowed you even as a child. I still sent presents for your birthday though, and I was supposed to let you sign the Toad contract and teach you the Rasengan when you reached the appropriate level of skill." That response deeply disappointed Hana, Anko, and Sora. Even though Tsunade had made a serious mistake, at least she had been duped. Tsunade and Shizune were both unhappy, but they had already heard the weak justification. With his arms trembling a little, Naruto said, "So you mean to tell me, you abandoned me in this hellhole for 12 years because of a spy network? It was necessary for Konoha's survival." "Naruto, surely you understand," Jiraiya said with another sigh. Naruto exclaimed, "Oh, I understand, all right," loudly. "You abandoned me so you could run from the death of your prized student. You left me to rot in squalor and hatred because you couldn't bear that Toussaint was dead. Your excuse is flimsy, Kyofu. I could see through it a mile away. As for the Rasengan and Toad summonings, I never would have been able to master the first because I was never trained until Aniki came along. The second is useless in almost every battle except against another summoner. You could have earned my trust back had you not lied straight to my face. Don't ever expect me to like you, Jiraiya-san, because I assure you, it will not happen." Glaring at Jiraiya, Sarutobi was frowning because Naruto had him completely right. While Shizune and Tsunade were shocked by the vicious retaliation, Jiraiya had repeatedly turned down the Sandame's requests to take Naruto. In fact, Sora and Anko were grinning a little. They watched with delight as Naruto tore apart the man who ought to have been looking out for Naruto's safety and innocence but instead galloped off into Kami knows where. In fact, Hana was grinning. She was pleased that Naruto could handle his godfather without losing emotional control and tearing the man to pieces. Abruptly, Naruto got up and approached Jiraiya, who was a little apprehensive about the boy. As Naruto put it, "One last thing, Jiraiya-san." Naruto cocked his right leg back and swiftly slammed them home into Jiraiya's balls, keeping through with his swing and launching Jiraiya out the open window, conveniently opened by Hana, and across town. "My two-san said that you deserve a punishment for ignoring me and I was to deal it out. However, I have decided to forego that punishment." Jiraiya sighed in relief and relaxed. "Big mistake. I'll be punishing you for peeping on Hana-chan and Ka-san instead." After nearly 2 full minutes of quieting down, Tsunade wiped a tear from her eye and said, "You most certainly are Kushina's son, Naruto." The room was quiet until she gave a small laugh, at which point everyone started laughing. "I understand. When we went to Valhalla with her, I really enjoyed pulling practical jokes on everyone," he remarked. With wide eyes, Tsunade, Shizune, Hana, and Sarutobi said, You met your mom?" Tsunade inquired. "I spent 2 years in Valhalla just fighting during my training," Naruto said, nodding. Sarutobi simply shook his head as the other 3 attempted to comprehend it, though Hana found it easier. "Tsunade," Naruto said, and everyone turned to face him, who was looking her in the eyes. "I can forgive you because of your grief," he said. "I know it must have been painful since I have never had a family member ripped from me. I am unable to comprehend how much still. I don't understand why you didn't come back for 13 years. With some harshness, he said. "You just said that you can't understand her pain," Shizune said, attempting to defend her sensei. She was entitled to it. "Bullshit. If it hadn't been a Sanin, she would have been reported missing and pulled back here by her hair," Naruto said, glaring at Shizune. "Yes, her station is commendable. She tries to numb her problems by gambling and drinking. She is in a lot of pain. But what about the other ninjas who have never run and have suffered the same loss?" He looked at Tsunade, who was taking this quite hard and was ready to punch her godson's lights out. "What of Dan and Nawaki? If they saw you like this, what would they say?" he asked gravely. "Where do you get off?" Tsunade shook her head, glaring at Naruto. "I hadn't even considered her brother and lover since that day 13 years ago. Could this boy be right? Would they be ashamed of her for her actions against Konoha?" She had returned. "But only temporarily. You certainly don't know me, and you didn't know them either." Angrily, she said. "No, I don't know you," Naruto said, squinting his eyes. "But Dan and Nawaki were in Valhalla. They frequently remarked that since they couldn't fulfill their dreams, you must have followed yours. Did they make a mistake by putting their dreams on you?" Everyone in the room was, to put it mildly, shocked when he asked, including Hana and Shizune, who were both rather shocked that Naruto was talking to Tsunade like he was reprimanding a child, and Sarutobi, who was secretly pleased that his student was receiving the reality check she needed. Sora and Anko had not been present all the time and had not heard of these discussions. Before leaving, Tsunade stammered for a few seconds and said, "They wanted me to be Hokage?" she muttered. "More than anyone," Naruto said with a serious nod. Tsunade bit her bottom lip and returned to her deep thoughts. Naruto sighed. "Listen. Take your time. They knew if you were Hokage that no one would dare mess with, and I quote, the most beautiful and talented hothead medic nin of our time." His response was he received a nod from Tsunade and grinned, saying, "I hope Genjutsu lasts, Oba-chan, because I don't think I could get used to seeing you all wrinkled. I'll be here when you're ready, and I'd like to get to know you." Tsunade gave him a tick mark for that comment and a gaki, and giggling from the crowded room, but it worked because everyone was grinning. "Well, since that's over," said Sarutobi, clearing his throat to be clear, "I'd promote you to Junin with all the training and experience, but even I couldn't ignore the backlash from the council if I did that." Naruto and Hana grinned proudly. Tsunade smirked, and Shizune smiled softly, while Sora and Anko grinned broadly at the news of their favorite knucklehead's promotion to Chunin. Naruto nodded, but Sora interrupted, saying, "Worm, I want to go out with Naruto, Anko, Hana, and myself to find Kakazu, Hidan, and Madara, who are Akatsuki members." The words, "You really think they are ready?" caused Sarutobi's eyes to widen. "Hana is the only person we need to train," Sora said with a nod, "but on her own, she's creative enough for us. She serves more as a healer and backup." He glanced at Tsunade and said, "I know she doesn't have many human jutsus, but..." "Yeah, sure. I'll train the brat's girlfriend," Tsunade said with a sly smile. "It should be easy for her to learn the more complex concepts if she already understands the fundamentals." "Are you serious?" Hana asked, her eyes widening. She questioned Tsunade. "Of course. I can't have my godson going out gallivanting without a medic. Grinned Tsunade. You two are probably going to be killed for the stunt you performed at the gates. I apologize for not getting to the healing aspects of dragon training yet, Naruto said with a sheepish laugh. It's low on the list because it doesn't fit my style. It will take roughly 2 months, Tsunade said. Nodding. Have you got that much patience? She looked at Sora and asked. Yeah, he said, nodding. I want you to train her in speed and evasion in the interim. Naruto, don't worry about strength just yet. Anko and I will be pursuing and hunting Akatsuki's non-immortal members, specifically Zetsu, Sasori, and Deidara. Consider it done, said Sarutobi, nodding. I'll remove Hana and Naruto from the active duty roster and pay them for a 2-month training trip. Please take care of the hospital with Shizune. Tsunade. Everyone nodded in agreement. All right. Then you're all fired. I can't pay you, Sora. But Anko will be getting a rank mission pay in addition to the bounties, so I'm sure that will be enough. I must battle this paperwork, he said, scowling at the papers that appeared on his desk without warning. Naruto laughed and said, Nay Oji-san, I am aware of the key to overcoming paperwork. Before he was kneeling before Naruto faster than the Hiraishin, Sarutobi's eyes widened to a comical scale. Please, please, please tell me, a wise one. I'll do anything, he uttered those words. Sarutobi was back at his desk, writing out 2 Sarutobi owes you slips, and he handed them to Naruto, who grinned and said, 2 times that I can call on you for anything and you will comply. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure and the Kami no Shinobi, began banging his head against the desk and uttering the words, stupid, 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 which caused everyone to perspire and hasten their departure from the room. After leaving the office, Tsunade turned to face Hana and said, You're joining me. We're starting now except for Friday and Saturday, which are rest days. Your physical training begins tomorrow before lunch and is followed by medic training. Naruto nodded behind Hana, who nodded in agreement with the timetable. Have a good day, Tenchi-chan. I'll see you at home, Naruto said, grinning as he approached Hana and planted a chaste kiss on her lips. With hope, he asked. Naruto nodded and smiled before he was kissed once more, and the 3 medics left. Hana grinned and said, Only if I get steak when I get there. Naruto turned to face Anko and Sora and said, I assume you'll be leaving? After they nodded, Sora said, Listen, Naruto, Itachi, and Kisame ought to be coming over here. Do you know how the dragons like to wander around and look around? They saw those 2 approaching, though if they keep up their current pace and strategy, it will take them roughly 2 weeks. Please, be careful. You got it, Aniki, Naruto said, nodding. Kisame is the muscle, so I'll take him out quickly. Kisame is a worse matchup for me, but that doesn't mean Itachi will be any easier. Kamen Ryu-kun, I want to drag Oroteme and throw him in front of the Akatsuki and watch them beat him up. Anko and Sora grinned. She exclaimed with delight. They vanished in a silver flash after Sora said, Hi Habiheim. Before returning to the Sandaime's office, Naruto shook his head and grinned, only to discover him reading Icha Icha while his clones handled all the work. After putting his book away as soon as he saw Naruto, Sarutobi turned to face him and said, Yes, Naruto? How may I help you? I need a certain bed made and I'm sure you can help me, Naruto said with a smile as he lifted up one of the slips of paper. Time skip. 3 days. 10 a.m. at Namikaze Estates. While his real self trained with Hana, Naruto had been working non-stop on D-rank missions to help as many people as possible with his clones. He was relieved that most people seemed to be at least apathetic toward him these days, and many of the shinobi offered apologies for past behavior, which he dismissed with a, I won't do it again. This had a very positive effect on his reputation. Hana had spent every night here completely exhausted from her training, and Naruto was no slouch in forcing her to dodge, and Tsunade had already forced her to memorize and learn the medical jutsu to stop and heal a deep puncturing wound. I have no idea what real medicine is, so I'm just going to explain the medic jutsus like this, sorry in advance. When Hana woke up, she was once again entangled with Naruto. It seemed that they had been unable to get enough of each other's company ever since he had returned. They had started eating lunch together, just like they had before the exams, and they were content. She smiled and cuddled up to Naruto a little more, who laughed and said, Good morning, Tenchi-chan. Greetings. Taiyo-kun, what's planned for today? Despite her refusal to move, she asked. He saw the expression on her face when she turned to face him and stopped her in her tracks, saying, We have training, so we need to get up, Hana-chan. I don't want to move either, but you need the training. Don't fight me, please, he uttered those words. Hana looked at him with a slight pout and said, Fine, in an exasperated tone, but you owe me barbecue for lunch. She smirked as she spoke. Hi, Naruto laughed, let's go. Okay. Naruto scrunched his face and said, I'll get that. You get dressed, Hana nodded. But then the front door knocked. Naruto hurriedly put on some pants and went to answer it, only to discover an Anbu standing there. "Naruto Uzumaki, you have been summoned by the Council of Konoha," he said. Before slamming the door in his face, Naruto said, "There is no Uzumaki at this residence Anbu. Please tell the council that Naruto Namikaze does not like being disturbed with useless summons." The Anbu appeared to blink before vanishing, and Naruto swiftly made a cage bunshin who hanged into a small table and plant before going upstairs. "Who was that, Naruto?" Hana inquired as she emerged wearing only her training attire of sandals and sweatpants. "You might want to change into something nicer," Naruto sighed as he dressed in his typical clothes. He said, "I have a feeling the council will force that Anbu to come back." Hana nodded and hurriedly changed, but as they were done, an incessant knock on the door caused them to turn to face one another, and Naruto opened the door once more. Unfortunately, the Anbu had brought a group of friends. "Uzumaki Naruto, you have been called by the Council of Konoha once again," the Anbu said. "Please comply or you will be detained and brought in for questioning." Both Naruto and Hana gave him a fierce look. "As I previously stated, Naruto Uzumaki is not present at this residence." "The council's refusal to acknowledge that bothers me." They nodded and were only mildly intimidated, but Naruto made his point clear. He took Hana's hand and vanished in a golden lightning bolt. And the Anbu swiftly shunned away, not even noticing the extra leaves on the ground. "I will come with you, but if you so much as make a wrong move in my direction," he said, focusing his ki on them. Chamber of Council. 10:15 a.m. Sume, Shikaku, and Shibi were quietly watching, actually amused at the idiots digging their own graves, especially since the Hokage wasn't here yet. The council was, to put it mildly, annoyed. First, they had summoned the demon Brad to demand that he give Sasuke the dragon summoning scroll and training, even though he had never asked for this in the first place. Then, they discovered that he was living in the Yondaimi's house and were about to expel him. "You have been sending an Anbu to my home and asking for a Naruto Uzumaki, who does not reside at my home, and demanding that I come to a meeting that obviously has nothing to do with me, Naruto Namikaze," Naruto said as he and Hana arrived in a grand fashion, standing in the middle of the room in a flash of gold that resembled the Yondaimi's renowned Hiraishin. The Ninja Council, who knew the secrets of his heritage, were laughing inwardly as the civilian council's jaws dropped. Satsumi Haruno got to his feet and yelled, "You are Naruto Uzumaki Demon Brat. It is highly unlikely that the Yondaimi would have a demon for a child, and they never had any. You do know that the Sandame's law is still in effect, correct Haruno-san?" Naruto said, his eyes hardening. "Before someone applies that law, I advise you to watch what you say." Satsumi appeared furious but hardly spoke. "I wonder, but why is this council meeting without its Hokage?" did he ask. An old voice said, "Why indeed Naruto-kun?" Sarutobi, Tsunade, Shizune, and a clone of Naruto entered, and the clone waved and grinned before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. The civilians were sweating profusely once more. Tsunade and the Kami no Shinobi. They couldn't bully the child now. "We are here because Naruto Uzumaki has taken residence at the Yondaimi's house," Homura said, getting up to address the Hokage who had taken his seat. "Why is Uzumaki-san permitted to enter and live there when it is well known that he is childless? Doesn't anyone read the decrees I send out anymore?" sighed Sarutobi. He stated firmly, "I sent one to each council member telling them about Naruto Namikaze's promotion and claim to his heritage. He cannot be the son of the Yondaimi." Satsumi screamed once more. It was Naruto's sword that nearly turned her into a shish kebab. "He's just a Haruno, finish that sentence. I'm sure you're to blame for the abuse I endured from your daughter," he said icily. "I'd be glad to enforce Sarutobi-ji-san's law." While secretly applauding him, Sarutobi remarked, Now Naruto-kun. That's enough." Naruto nodded and leapt back to his spot next to Hana. "Check out the medical reports I, myself, have run on his blood. If you don't believe it, it matches the Yondaimi's by 90%. He is clearly related to Naruto," Tsunade remarked, distributing numerous copies of the report. After giving it a quick glance and scowling, Danzo turned to Sarutobi and said, "We could have shaped him into an even more potent weapon if we had known his background. The boy would be unstoppable with the Kyuubi's chakra and the Yondaimi's techniques. I'm upset about losing this tool," he said. "Kyuubi's gone, you one-eye freak," scowled Naruto. The council was taken aback when he said, "I'm the only one standing here." "You're the Kyuubi," a random civilian exclaimed as he leapt to his feet. "You can't let him go. Before you received this, we ought to have killed you, URK." His head was impaled on an ANBU's sword before he could finish the sentence. "It's true," sighed Sarutobi. "The Kyuubi couldn't die with Naruto because of his strong soul. So Naruto made a deal with him. He would be returned to Makai and leave Naruto with a lot of chakra and a fighting style in exchange for his personal pledge to never return to Konoha or the Land of Fire for the next 1000 years. Not completely false, but close enough. Sarutobi thought the council gaped Kyuubi was gone. If that is the case, Danzo said again, I suggest that we commemorate the exile of the Kyuubi and the hero who helped us achieve this triumph. We should also place him under the CRA. We cannot let such a significant clan wither and die. Perhaps I can learn the Yondaime's methods if I can gain some influence over him from his wives or kids, he thought. Naruto strongly objected, saying, I don't want that. I'm not going to marry more than one woman. I will not compel the woman I love to accept someone else into our relationship. He spoke firmly, and Hana, Sume, Tsunade, Shizune, and Sarutobi all grinned as they heard it. After glancing at Danzo, Sarutobi said, You heard him. Furthermore, the CRA is for those who possess Kekkei Genkai, which Naruto does not. Danzo swore inwardly, I am happy to declare that I will be leaving my position as Hokage within the next week. I will announce our new Hokage to the village on Monday. The council appeared stunned once again, and many were wondering, who could take the position? Difficult. Could I presume that Lady Tsunade will replace you? Shikaku drew back. The council cheered for her, but many were secretly fuming because Tsunade was known for being stubborn and short-tempered, and they wouldn't be able to control her the way they could the elderly Sarutobi. Indeed, Tsunade Senju will be the Godem Hokage on Monday, Sarutobi said, laughing and nodding amid the applause. Naruto and Hana slipped out, undetected by everyone except a select few. After entering a BK restaurant, Naruto and Hana sat down to eat, largely in silence, until Hana turned to face Naruto and asked, Did you mean what you said back there? What do you mean, Hana-chan? Naruto cocked his head to say. Did you mean what you said when you said you loved me? Hana asked. Looking directly into his eyes she asked, feeling a little scared and nervous. She loved him, and after spending 2 months with him every day, she knew that being apart from him was agonizing, but she wanted to know if he felt the same way. Of course I did, Naruto said with a gentle smile as he took her hands. I mean, why would I lie about that? Naruto was in heaven when Hana, with a bright smile and tears in her eyes, leaned forward and kissed him. They didn't fight over tongues, but the kiss was so powerful that neither of them wanted to pull away. When their need for air became too great, they broke apart, panting a little. I have to go see Naruto-kun. Shall we meet up tonight? She inquired. Of course, see ya then. Naruto nodded. Only 2 more days, he thought cheerfully as she slid out the door and out of the booth. Naruto was eager for Friday. Namikaze Estates, Friday, 8 a.m. Naruto had gotten up early and sent a clone to ask Kurenai for a favor. Knowing that Kurenai would be happy to help him get Hana out of the house for the majority of the day, he grinned softly and began to run his fingers through her hair, sensing that today would be a good day. With a smile, Hana turned her head to Naruto's and said, Good morning, Taiyo-kun. With a simple smile in return, Naruto said, Good morning. Did you get a good night's sleep? Yeah, although the bed just doesn't feel, Hana said, nodding on his chest before stuttering as she searched for the correct phrase. Comfortable? Naruto smirked as he asked, Yes, that's it. Don't stop, because I still enjoy waking up to your hands running through my hair. Listen, Tenshi-chan, why don't you go out and have fun with your friends today? She said in a slightly childish manner. At the end Naruto laughed and was reminded of his Kage Bunshin. My treat. With a playful scowl, Hana remarked, Naruto-kun, are you attempting to get rid of me? Not at all, Naruto said with a quick shake of his head. For your date tonight, I simply thought you would want to be spoiled. He held up 3 tickets to the Konoha Springs, and Hana's eyes widened and took on the shapes of stars. Boo it, if you don't want them, he said, but before he could finish, Hana grabbed the tickets and vanished into the bathroom. I even got you and your friends full-day massages. Still in awe of her ability to move so quickly when properly motivated, Naruto laughed and kissed Hana as she flew out of the bathroom and down the stairs to fetch her friends. He was happy that Kurenai had agreed to help him because, after all, he didn't want to ruin the surprise, so he planned her day with 2 major activities that every woman loves. Shopping and spas in the afternoon. Kurenai would take Hana shopping, and Naruto would have plenty of time to set up his house for tonight. When the doorbell rang, Naruto hurriedly got dressed and went downstairs to wait for the people he had hired today. He grinned when he saw what he had been waiting for and said, Ah, good boys, bring it right in and let's get to work. Lunch. A BK restaurant at noon. After that amazing trip to the spa, Hana, Kurenai, Shizune, and Yugao were unwinding. Kurenai had gathered the other 2 girls and told them that Naruto had a surprise for Hana and that she needed to be occupied. Both girls had agreed, and they also received spa treatments. The girls ate most of the lunch in silence until Shizune could take it no more. So, How did you and Naruto meet? She asked, glancing at Hana. Well, he would always bring in these wounded animals to the clinic, Hana said with a gentle smile. He was most likely 5 years old at the time he brought in a baby bird that was injured. He held it very tenderly even though all I could do at the time was watch or clean the kennels and room. I can still recall the terrified expression on his face. For the little bird, he was afraid I was aware that he was referred to as a bad boy, but after seeing that, I realized it was all nonsense. As a result, I saw him more frequently as he continued the trend. He would talk to me about anything after I started treating them other than healing the animals, which was my responsibility. He never asked for anything from me when the animal was healed again. He always had such a joyful expression. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He has a golden heart. With a gentle smile, Shizune said, I see you're quite fond of him. After Hana nodded, Kurenai laughed and remarked, well, then I think you need something to knock him dead. After a brief stutter, Hana said, I have enough clothes to knock him dead. Kurenai, she uttered those words. Honey, you have to knock him dead. Yugao sighed. She challenged Hana to deny it, saying, you keep having that look in your eyes that I get when I want to spend a night with Hayate-kun. Note. Hayate didn't die in my version, he was just too wounded to join in the invasion. With a deep red flush, Hana whispered, yeah perhaps. After hearing 3 girly screams, the friends set out to get Hana an outfit that would make Naruto and all other straight men swoon and gaze at her like she was fine meat. Inuzuka campioned that evening at 7 p.m. after a brief shopping spree that Naruto had paid for. Hana was ready to kill him. As Yugao put it, she sighed and finished arranging her hair, then grinned when she heard the crunching of feet outside her house. She turned to face her clean room, hoping it would remain that way tonight, as she had no plans to go back to it. With his little project for his house finished, Naruto was beaming. He had plenty of time to go ask Kurenai how Hana was doing, and he got a subliminal hint that she had no plans to return home after tonight. Naruto was wearing a black jacket with a golden dragon coiling on the back, a simple dark red short-sleeved button-up shirt, and a black slack. He played with something in his pocket for a minute before refocusing. He strode to the home of the head of the Inuzuka clan, took a quick gulp, and knocked on the door. Just a minute. Rang from inside, and a joyful Sume answered. Ah, Naruto-kun. Sume said with a bright smile, come right in, Hana should be ready any minute. Sume-san. Thank you. Would it be okay if I waited for her in the living room? Naruto inquired courteously. Sure pup, Sume said, laughing and nodding. Please stop using honorifics, they make me feel aging. Naruto, who appeared anxious and kept looking at the hallway, sat down at Sume's request after the two entered the living room. Calm down, puppy, tonight. Kiba won't be here. Sume tried to calm himself by saying, he's out on a mission, and it seemed to help, albeit only a little. He's not the one I'm afraid of, Naruto said, shaking his head. What if we go somewhere that Hana doesn't like? Will my outfit appeal to her? How can I be sure I didn't make a mistake? He inquired. Naruto. His eyes lifted to meet Sume's, and he scowled. She doesn't care where you take her, just make sure you do what you always do, Sume said. Feeling a little nervous about dating for the first time, listen to her tell the truth when she asks you a question. Keep your gaze fixed on her unless she makes you look. She will appreciate it if you act like a gentleman, Sume said coolly. That seemed to do the trick, as Naruto appeared to relax. Hana smiled softly and thought, thanks mom. His face was priceless, and she was silently smirking as his eyes moved over her form. She was wearing a gorgeous, shoulderless, deep forest green dress that fit her body perfectly, with slits at her hips that allowed her to move her legs freely. She was wearing a silver necklace with a golden claw around her neck, and she had no lipstick on her lips. Though her eyes had a hint of mascara and a deep green eyeliner that complemented her brown eyes, her hair was let down to cascade around her face like a waterfall, and overall, she had an earthy appearance that brought out her natural endowments rather well. Putting a finger beneath Naruto's chin and closing it, she said, I'm glad you like it so much, but I am rather hungry. I apologize, Naruto said, shaking his head. You see amazing, Tenchi-chan. With a hint of redness, Hana said, you don't look half bad yourself, Taiyo-kun. That was good, the two lovers said as they turned to see Sume standing there with a camera and a smile. If you strip, I'll get a couple pictures of that. Beat red, Hana exclaimed. Mom. Before more teasing could take place, Sume winked and grinned at Naruto, who swiftly seized Hana and left the room. 7:15 p.m. Dragon of the Leaf. I apologize in advance. I have no training in Japanese cuisine. Naruto and Hana had walked hand in hand all the way to the Dragon of the Leaf, which was one of the best restaurants in the area and served Hana's favorite dish, steak with a side of chicken shish kebabs. As they came to a halt outside the eatery, Hana turned to face Naruto and said, "Here?" she inquired. After nodding and pulling Hana inside, Naruto said, "Two for Namikaze?" As they approached the Matra, he inquired. Naruto had foreseen people's disapproval of him and had paid extra to get a private booth and a special service so that he would be able to enjoy his date with Hana. "Yes, right this way please," he ground out as he led them to a secluded booth. "Your waiter will be with you momentarily." The Matra had barely suppressed a frown as he passed by. Unfortunately, he had orders from the restaurant manager to let them pass. Hana and Naruto nodded to the man and accepted their menus. When Hana saw her favorite dish, her eyes brightened, and she turned to face Naruto, who was grinning a little. She leaned over the table to give him a good look at her cleavage and gave him a kiss on the lips, saying, "Good choice, Naruto-kun." When the waiter returned, they placed their orders quickly and engaged in small talk, mostly about the training Tsunade was doing with Hana. Their food arrived rather quickly, and they tucked in. The food was delicious, and Hana was grinning appreciatively, thinking that Naruto had chosen the place especially for her because it didn't serve ramen. Naruto smiled and said, "Glad you liked it, Hana-chan." The waiter arrived shortly after and took their drink orders of sweet tea for the two of them. She watched Naruto finish his sushi, which wasn't his favorite food, but he had grown fond of it since she forced him to try it. "Naruto-kun," she said with a slight smirk. "I appreciate the dinner. It was fantastic," she remarked. "I'm glad you liked it, Tenshi-chan," Naruto said with a smile. With a hint of sexiness, Hana asked, "So, did you have anything else planned for tonight?" In a fictitious contemplative stance, Naruto observed Hana staring at him out of the corner of his eye. I dunno," he said. Hana felt a little deflated when he said, "I was hoping a beautiful lady would accompany me to my favorite spot in the village, but I don't see any, so he doesn't think I'm beautiful, huh?" Hana asked, and Naruto grinned. "I guess I'll just have to settle for the hottest angel in the village instead." The compliment caused Hana's eyes to sparkle and her cheeks to flush. "Are you certain you don't want a beautiful lady to go with you?" In a playful tone, she said. Before asking Hana something very important, Naruto had one last thing to show her. He laughed and said, "Nah, you're way better than that." He was still grinning. Hana nodded and smiled as Naruto paid the check and they hurried out the door. Monument to Hokage. 8 p.m. Naruto was standing on top of the Yondaime's head, and Hana was being gently led by Naruto down a lonely path that led to the bangs of his father's face. When they arrived, Hana gasped because she could see the entire village from here, and it appeared to be the night sky, complete with the lights and sounds of a beautiful city winding downhill. "Pretty," she remarked. Naruto laughed and said, "Yeah, pretty." He never took his eyes off her face, and when she finally realized this, she blushed again, but she was done playing games. Her logical side was agreeing with her, and her feral side was screaming at her, and she knew she wanted to be with him, but she also wanted to make sure he was okay with it. She slowly got closer to him and kissed him gently. They backed away, panting, and Hana stared at him with unbridled lust, not to say that Naruto didn't have the same look. She leaned forward and her hot breath hit his ear, saying, "I don't plan on sleeping for very long tonight, Naruto-koi." Naruto was a little surprised she acted so quickly, but he was happy when he began to engage in a tongue war. "How about you?" Sexily, she asked. "Please listen, Hana-chan." Hana was a little upset, but she fixed him with a look that said, "You better have a damn good reason for this." Naruto sighed, shivering and taking a small step back, which caused a frown to appear on her face. "If we continue down this way, I wanted to let you know there's no turning back," Naruto said. "We become somewhat dragon-like. Once a dragon soul appears, we are permanently married to the person we marked, which occurs naturally during intercourse." A lustful Hana Inuzuka suddenly pushed him against the wall and raked his lips. "I want to be with you, but I wanted to make sure that you understood the consequences. I already knew what would happen because Anko gave me the warning a week ago," she said, breathing hotly onto his ear. "I know all about feral instincts, Naruto. Give up battling it." Hana was about to throw him off the cliff after Naruto gently pushed her away again when he grabbed a ring from his pocket and said, "I promised my mom that I'd propose to you before I marked you, Hana-chan." He grinned at her shocked response and got down on one knee, looking up at her. The ring was a gorgeous diamond ring with a dragon coiled around the top and a canine on the bottom, their tails intertwined with their snouts touching on the other end. "Hana Inuzuka, will you marry me?" he asked gravely. Hana was taken aback. Marking each other during intercourse was one thing, but asking her for her hand in marriage? That was a bit right. She grinned. Although they had only been dating for 2 months at the time, he had known her for 4 years. Besides that, they had known each other for years, so there was no reason why she couldn't say yes. After all, a mate mark is the same thing, right? She uttered those words. Sliding the ring onto her right hand, he said, "Yeah, I do, because my mom would kill me if I didn't." After laughing and admiring the ring, Hana looked back at Naruto and said, "Now, I want my prize and you're keeping it from me." Slightly feral, she said. Hana cocked her head to the side as Naruto grabbed her waist and they vanished in a golden flash. Naruto gulped and laughed simultaneously. "I have one last thing for you before we get to the main event, my love," he said.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.